quarter after 10.
Good for you.
Good crowd, though?
Pabst Farms.
I don't know what.
No, we were, after Lake View Acres, then we moved out.
I'd like to call the common council meeting for Tuesday, August 20th to order. Has it been appropriately noticed?
Yes, it has.
Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Stray,
I'm here.
Alderman Kavieski,
Here.
Alderman Rozak,
Here.
Alderman Shaw,
Here.
Alderman Ellis,
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg,
Here.
Alderman Zwart.
Here.
And Alderman Rogers is excused this evening.
Without objection, I'm going to move the comments and suggestions from citizens up to the top. We have a couple of presentations. The first one is a presentation of donation of the Wizard of Oz commemorative globe produced by Joyce Foy, Cool Joy Studio, and donated by Ann Sapinza. So, you want to come on up? Go ahead.
You got Toto in that bag, in that box?
What?
You got Toto in
I
that basket?
wish.
Oh, the wizard, because he was always in a basket, right?
Okay, can you lower it?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh.
Oops.
It looks precarious. Don't drop it.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Lou, make sure you don't drop it.
Lou, don't sneeze.
Walk away.
So you want to just kind of give a little bit of information about the inspiration for that? and-
Sure. So like a month ago, because I'm not a really good planner, decided I own Cool Joy Studio behind Roots. And I've always been a lifelong Wizard of Oz fan. So I was kicking around ideas what I could do for the celebration. And I love the scene where it's the Wicked Witch with the globe. And she's putting her hands around it and going, poppies. As a matter of fact, my husband, sometimes when he likes to stick it to me and think I'm kind of being grumpy, he's like, oh, poppies. So it's one of my favorite scenes. So I wanted to do something like that front and center. And originally, I was just going to have the whole globe just plain, just with that scene. And I was always going to do the yellow brick road base. I thought that would be really cool. And then the more I thought about it, I thought I would like to just do all the iconic scenes and characters from the movie. So, you know, we've got all the main characters, the Scarecrow, the Wizard, Lion, Tin Man, Dorothy, Wicked Witch. We also have Ms. Gulch, who is who the Wicked Witch is prior to turning into the witch. The Munchkins, the Yellow Brick Road, Emerald City. So I just thought this would be a really interesting thing to do and have on display in my store. And I kept posting it on my Instagram and Facebook every step of the way. And people kept on saying, oh my gosh, the city needs that. Oh my gosh, the city needs that. Oh my gosh, the city needs that. By the way, there's like neon green lights that turn on in here, and it glows then too. I know, is there a plug around here or no?
No, probably
There's
not.
gotta be
okay.
one somewhere.
Not something that you probably, I don't want you knocking it over.
Okay, so, so you'll have to take a peek at that. So, you know, I like to include everybody in my processes, so they saw me making it, saw me glazing it, saw me at night having to invert laundry baskets over it to keep my cats away from it so they wouldn't knock it off the table, and everybody just kept on commenting, the city really needs this. So to be very honest, Tuesday I was doing the final glazing, and Lou actually had reached out to me, and Ann Sapienza had reached out to me, and they both thought it would be a great idea to do something where it could be donated to the city, and you know, you guys can do with it what you want.
Historical Society, the library. Historical Society and the library and other local entities to help provide access to this piece as a way to promote our community and the wonderful event of the Wizard of Oz. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do we get to keep the basket too?
Yes, yes.
Hey, Lou, is my is my picture on there, Lou?
The monkey is.
No, no. The scarecrow, I have no brain.
You're trusting Mark with it, okay. The next is a presentation by Mike Peters of WPPI Energy President and CEO. Joe, you want to start this out?
Yes, please. Good evening. Mike Peters is here. He is the CEO of WPPI Energy, which you guys know is, we are a member owner of WPPI. It's where we get our large power from to resell to our residents here. So he wants to talk a little bit about WPPI Energy and how things are going. So there you go, Mike.
Well, I went old school. I actually have paper.
Thank
You
you.
guys have a great system here, and I wish I would have had the PowerPoint for you to use so the audience could see it as well. But my name is Mike Peters. I'm the president and CEO of WPPI Energy, and you're probably asking, why should we care? I think your finance committee just approved paying your power bill. It was well over $1 million. We represent, when you send an electric bill to your customers, you are the utility, but you buy your power from WPPI along with 50 other municipal utilities. We represent typically that power component of your electric bill is typically around 80 to 85% of the cost. And so that's why Joe Pickard cares about what WPPI does. It's why your city administrator cares. It's why we are a partner in providing electric service to your customers to make Oconomowoc a strong community and a strong public power community. So I want to talk a little bit about what WPPI does on behalf of our 51 members. We focus on 3 areas. Wholesale power supply is what brought us together as an entity. We also provide a number of services. Matter of fact, half of our staff, we have about 110 employees, half of the staff is dedicated to delivering services to our member community. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the services that Oconomowoc takes advantage of. And then advocacy is a big part of what WPPI does. We were established in 1980, but before WPPI could come into being, legislation had to be passed in the state of Wisconsin to allow municipal utilities to band together and own assets collectively and purchase large blocks of power collectively through an entity called the Joint Action Agency. That legislation passed in the late 1970s, and WPPI was established in 1980. And from that point forward, we started with 23 members, and today we have 51 in 3 different states. Collectively, our member utilities serve about 200,000 customers. Electrically, we are the 4th largest combined utility when you look at it that way in the state of Wisconsin. So we're large enough to own very large assets, enter into some very large-scale contracts, and then we bring those economies of scale to your community so you have a more diversified power supply resource than you would have if you were a standalone municipal utility. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means for you. We look at power supply as managing a portfolio of assets and contracts to give you a diverse resource mix so that you have renewables, natural gas, coal, nuclear, demand response programs all available so that we can manage your costs over the long term. We don't know what the price of natural gas is going to be 5 years, 10 years from now. 10 years ago, renewables were expensive. Today, they're much more competitive. There's constant discussion about coal regulation, and so we don't know what the future holds, but the best thing we can do from a strategy standpoint is have a diversified portfolio, just like you do with your retirement account. I suspect you don't have all your retirement in one stock. You probably have a diversified portfolio in your retirement funds, or you're with the WRS, which has a very diversified portfolio, and that gives you stability over the long term. One of the things we do focus on when we look at power supply is cost. We know that our member communities, that is a critical component of what you bring to your communities from a municipal utility standpoint is what's the cost for electricity. Your business community, your commercial industrial customers, that's very important to them, as it is your residential customers. So cost is very important. Also, the environmental attributes of that electricity. What is the environmental impact of that power supply resource that you're bringing into our community? A few years ago, we looked at adding some additional resources to our portfolio mix. We went out and did an RFP, a request for proposals, and we had 62 responses. We ended up signing contracts for 2 resources, both of them renewable. One is the Bishop Hill Wind Energy Center. There's a picture of it on the slide. That's actually the wind farm that's located in northern Illinois. It's electrically connected to our system, and so we can bring that power in. It's a 132 megawatt wind farm that did 2 things for us. It reduced our emissions long-term, and it reduced our average power cost long-term. So those are 2 wins from our perspective. Another resource that we signed a contract for was a solar, 100 megawatt solar farm. At the time we announced it, it was the largest announced farm in the solar array in the state of Wisconsin. Matter of fact, one of the largest in the upper Midwest. Since then, WEPCO has announced a very large farm, as has MG&E. And so solar is very cost competitive, even in this part of the country where, you know, it's already starting to get a little bit darker a little earlier, but it's still cost competitive. And so we signed a long-term contract with a developer called NextEra Energy, one of the largest renewable energy developers in the country. And that solar array is going to be built around the Point Beach nuclear plant and will come online in 2021. That contract did 2 things for us: reduced our emissions and also reduced our average power cost over the long term. So we've been able to add resources, reduce our emissions, and from your standpoint, we did it while reducing our average power cost. You have a chart in your packet. If you look at where our costs were at in 2014, you can see that they've actually come down. Matter of fact, you have to go back to 2009. Our prices today are equal to what they were in 2009. And so we've held costs pretty steady and have actually reduced them. Looking forward over the next 5 years, from 2019 through 2023, you can see those bars are all pretty equal. We estimate, based on our resource mix and our projections, that our average cost is going to go up by 2% or less. That's not 2% per year over that 5 years, that's 2% or less over that entire 5-year period. And so again, stable, competitive wholesale power supply cost, critical to your community, critical to your municipal utility and to the customers that you serve. You have any questions about our power supply and what we're doing from a resource standpoint?
Questions?
I do, but I'll save it till the end.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, happy to do that. You know, one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is being a member-led, member-owned organization. And so we have well over 75 to 100 people amongst our 51 member communities that donate time to WPPI, either serving on our executive committee. That's our main governing body. We have a board of directors. They meet 3 times a year. They make the big decisions like what's our rate going to be. They approve an asset purchase. They approve us issuing debt. And they delegate a lot of the other management aspects to the executive committee, which is made up of members of the board of directors. Joe, your utility manager, sits on our board and sits on our executive committee. Sarah is an alternate as well. And so you have been a very important part of the governing of WPPI, and I appreciate your willingness to do that. We also have a lot of advisory groups. All the programs and services I'm going to talk about have gone through some advisory group process. So it's not stuff that we dream up necessarily. It's stuff that our members have asked for and our staff has developed, and we work with our advisory groups. Joe actually serves on a couple advisory groups as well. He serves on our member services advisory group. Johanna Ron serves on a distribution services advisory group, which looks at some of the joint purchasing programs that we put in place. And then John Hsu sits on our rates group. That actually is the starting place when we start talking about what our wholesale rate's going to be. That's the group that first looks at it and makes recommendations and decisions on what we're going to do with our wholesale rate. So when we talk about services a lot, you hear the buzz phrase about utilities of the future. Frankly, it's utilities of today. Your customers, just like everybody here, expect a certain level of service from your, whoever you deal with from a business standpoint. You expect to be able to, look up your bank statement or send an email or a text message to a vendor. You expect to be able to get a response. You do that on your own time. Matter of fact, we all have, if you have kids, you know that they'd rather text than answer a phone. And so we have the ability in your utility to do email contacts, and we're continuing to look at what we can offer from a technology standpoint to make sure that what you deliver to your customers and how you communicate with your customers meets their level of expectations. I know that you've upgraded your billing system. You now use the North Star system, which is a hosted software solution that WPPI manages with our staff. You have AMI metering, which is a state-of-the-art metering technology. That's integrated with a meter data management system. That's a software system that cost WPPI $2 million when we installed it, and we have 2 full-time employees that make that system work. That's an example of our 51 members pulling their resources. Oconomowoc wouldn't spend $2 million on a software package for billing systems. But WPPI can do that. We can make that available to our members and do so at a very cost-effective way. And so that's just one way of how we meet your customers' expectations and your expectations as a member of WPPI. I have on page 11, there's a whole host of services. Cybersecurity is a big issue for WPPI and our member communities. We work very closely to make sure that our systems are safe and that the systems that we provide to our members are safe as well. We use state-of-the-art technology and staff to manage that process as well. Any questions on services and what we're doing in that area?
I will just wait till the end.
Sure, I'll do that. And then the last piece, again, is advocacy. I can tell you that having a voice, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or in Madison, with respect to regulation at the PSCW, the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin, or the state legislature, is critical to the success of WPPI and to our member communities. Every year, legislation is being discussed that could have an impact on your community, on your municipal utility, and we work very closely with the municipal associations to make sure that whatever gets implemented is not detrimental to our members and to WPPI and would result in higher costs or higher rates to customers unnecessarily. So it's a big part of what we do. We appreciate Joe's willingness to go with us when we call on legislators, whether it's in DC or in Madison. Having that local connection is very important. I think the most effective lobbying group I've ever seen is a group of mayors. People, elected representatives like to talk to representatives from local communities, and mayors, aldermans, the local utility managers. Those are all critical to establish those connections. They can talk to hired hands like myself, but they want to have that connection back home with somebody that is from that community. And so I appreciate Joe and others' willingness to support WPPI as we work together collaboratively. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about what we're up to and the direction we're going with your wholesale power supply resources and services.
Yeah, just a few real quick questions on the at-a-glance document that you
Yes.
gave us, second part of there's a power purchase agreement, and in there is WPS and WEPCO.
Correct.
Obviously, you just say System Energy. Could we get a breakdown? You don't have to do that now if you don't know it off the top of your head, but I'd be curious what the breakdown is
Actually,
in
we do-
WPS and WEPCO on
Yeah.
what their sources of energy are.
Those contracts, we have, both of those contracts are called slice of system contracts. And so we get the actual blend of what is in their resource mix. And we have a contract, I think those contracts run until the mid-2020 timeframe. But it literally is whatever's in their resource mix. It's not coming from a specific unit, but it's coming from their resource mix. We actually track the fuel mix and have to report that every year. So I have that information, but not at my fingertips. I'll make sure Joe gets it.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to look at. One of the things you mentioned, and I think you mentioned this last year too, is that the renewables is cost competitive.
Yes.
And I'm curious what that means as far as a comparison between other forms of energy.
Sure.
You're saying it's cost competitive. To me, what that sounds like is it's more expensive, but not quite much more expensive.
You know, it depends on what you're looking for. And so when you look for energy resources, there's two components of it. There's capacity, which is the ability to generate power, and then there's energy, which is actually the generation of that electricity. Wind farms, right now, you can get prices quoted for a wind farm for 2 cents a kilowatt hour, which is extremely cheap. A coal plant will probably dispatch at about 20 to 25 cents, 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So a coal plant is probably equal or more expensive than wind energy, but the challenge with wind is you don't get to control when that generates. So you take it when it generates, and then you have to have dispatchable energy. Solar energy, but you don't get a lot of capacity credit for that wind. You get it when it runs.
And when you're talking about that capacity,
Yes.
so what you're saying is when renewables like solar or wind aren't working, you still have to have capacity
You
to
have
take
to
out that
have-
excess.
Yeah, matter of fact, we're in the part of the country that's governed by or controlled electrically by the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. And what that organization does is it ensures that there's enough generation capacity across all hours of the day and year to keep the lights on. And
Whether the wind's blowing or the sun's
whether the
shining or
wind's
not, right?
blowing or the sun's shining or not, or whether we have negative 40, degree temperatures in the middle of a solar vortex this last winter. Interesting things happened at that point in time. All the wind dropped off at minus 20 degrees. We learned that the towers are not designed to handle the stresses at that low temperature, and so they trip off automatically when you get below negative 20. And so we had to have gas generation or diesel or coal or nuclear running to keep the lights on. So yes, renewables are cost competitive. In some aspects, they're cheaper. If you're looking for cheap energy, wind does a really good job right now. Solar, from a capacity standpoint, is very good because it generates typically on peak when we have our peaks, or in the summer, those summer afternoons where we've had multiple warm days, 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. That solar is generating and is delivering that electricity at that point in time, so we get good capacity out of that solar.
Now, I'm looking at the fuel mix for 2018. It's still heavy on coal. I know there's been a lot of commentary about coal being dirty, but is WPPI looking at expanding its nuclear portfolio at all? Is that something that's even possible? Is it something that's in the mix?
We have a long-term contract with NextEra, who owns the Point Beach nuclear plant. That plant is licensed to the year 2030. There's 2 units. One goes to 2030, one goes to 23. We have we have a contract that goes to the life of the license. Whether or not they extend that license is totally on them. We're probably getting to a time frame where they're going to have to make some decisions, and we'll see which direction that goes. If they do extend that license, we would be interested and would discuss with them the potential of extending our contracts as well. Other nuclear plants that are being built, there's only one right now in the country that's being it's being developed, but it's significantly over budget. There was another nuclear plant that was being developed that basically went bust, and they've stopped any further development on that project. So I don't think we're going to see large-scale nuclear, but there is some promising, it's called small modular reactors. And basically, it's more or less the land-based equivalent to what might be on a nuclear-powered ship. But they're able to basically make these units that are 50 to 100 megawatts and stack them up, so you can have 12 of these together from 1 to 12 in a facility that more or less runs like a battery. They operate for 4 to 5 years. You pull it out, you drop in a new one, and that's how you refuel the system. So there's a utility similar to us in Utah that has the #1 serial number, and they're working with DOE and the developer of that technology to bring it online in the early 20s. And we'll watch and see where that goes. But it has a lot of promise.
Great. Thank you
Yep.
for your answers. I appreciate
Kevin?
it.
Thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
The average power cost to members in 2017, and then looking at 2018, what brought that down?
A couple of things brought that down. Tax reform. We're not taxable, but the investor-owned utilities that we buy some power from, they're taxable. American Transmission Company, which makes up about 15% of our costs, they're taxable. When their tax rate dropped due to tax reform last December, those reduced costs automatically flowed to us, and then we automatically flow them down to our member communities. The third component of that is that we had prepaid some debt. We did some refinancing last year, early in the year, and we had cash more than what we needed in our reserves. And so we used that cash, instead of refinancing part of that debt, we actually paid it off. And that reduced our debt service cost by about $4 million a year. So that was another reduction in costs that immediately flowed down to our customers.
Like,
Yeah, it went up slightly. There's inflationary pressure, just like any business has. So a lot of our wholesale contracts do have escalation clauses where they might go up like 1%. And because our power cost was actually so far below budget, what we project in this 2019 is what we're budgeting for the year. Currently, we're running below budget. So our actual year-end data, when we publish that early next year, will show that what we're showing in this graph, we're actually going to come in under that number. So we project what our budget is going to be and what our costs are going to be on an average basis based on our planning resource, and that's what we report here. But we did see a slight tick up from 2018 to 2019, and then it holds pretty steady going forward.
what next year's cost will be, and
Well, we retire a little bit of debt every year. We have debt service payments that go towards principal and interest each year. But as far as our projected costs for next year, as I said, over that 5-year period, we're projected to increase no more than 2% overall, collectively over that 5 years. So it won't be much.
Any other questions? Lou?
I'd like to say thank you for the information. It's comprehensive. It's nice to know that we have a partner that has a diversified portfolio in regards to how you provide reliable energy to our community. And I think our utility does a fantastic job of distributing that.
They do. You have one of the highest reliabilities in the state. You do a great job. Joe and your team here does an exceptional job of keeping the lights on. Our job is to deliver the power, and Joe's job and your system is to get it out to the customers, and you guys do a really good job.
Good. One of the things that I see your community solar gardens, that would be a form of distributed solar as opposed to a solar farm.
Yeah.
It's a relatively small portion of the overall capacity. And I think we have a few examples of projects here in our community that have tied into those programs that you make available.
Yeah, we've done grants for solar. One of the things that we started a few years ago, we know that not-for-profit entities, tax-exempt entities, can't take advantage of the tax credits that are available for solar. And so what we developed was a program where we will do competitive grants to churches, schools, communities, not-for-profits, and based on some of the criteria, we'll give grant dollars that try to equate what they would otherwise get from a tax benefit, so that they can move forward with some and own the renewable resource as opposed to buying it from a third party. The community solar program, we piloted 2 community solar gardens with 2 of our 51 members, and the plan was that we would put in a larger utility scale solar array. It is significantly less expensive the larger the array. And so if we can do like a 100 megawatt system, that's cheaper than if you do it 100 1 megawatt systems or 1,000, smaller systems. So doing it in large scale saves money to customers. So we wanted to put together a system where we would build a utility scale solar array, but customers could buy the output from the panels. And so we developed that program. The challenge that we have in the state of Wisconsin is municipal utilities are regulated. And so the program that we developed, we felt would be comparable to a customer making a decision between putting something on their roof or buying the output from one of our panels in a larger system. The program that we filed with the Public Service Commission got changed through that process, and ultimately the economics did not come out looking as good as what we had filed and asked for. And so it'll be a challenge if we have any other communities that want to go with community solar. under this current model. So we're looking at other ways, if we can find other ways that make it cost competitive to putting it on your roof, it will actually benefit the utility, it'll benefit customers too.
Thank you.
What is the cost of those wind generators?
You mean the output? What is it?
You know, the whole tower and everything, because I was going up to the Myra the other day, and there's like, they're all over the place.
Oh, they're
huh?
everywhere.
Yeah, and then what's
Yeah.
the average cost? $1 million?
I have no idea.
You don't?
I know,
All right.
yeah, for a
million?
typical.
And then when I was coming back down, they all shut off. Was that because I stopped talking?
Wind
Oh,
stop blowing.
well, Tom,
Yeah,
what-
they'll kick off at a certain amount.
What it was?
I know what the generation cost is. That's what I look at, because we don't own renewables directly. We contract with it for developers to build it, then we buy it from them, because like I said, we're tax exempt, and so we can't take advantage of the tax credits, whether it's an investment tax credit for solar or a production tax credit for wind. And so the way we get the benefit is we negotiate with a taxable entity like NextEra Energy to develop the project. We buy the output, and so I have a really good knowledge of what the costs of those, of the output is, and we get that through contracts. But as far as what it costs to build a wind farm, Joe probably knows more about it than I do, so.
Well, just keep Tom Bodett and keep his lights on, will you?
We'll do that together.
Shirley?
You were talking about the community solar gardens there, and what size area do you need to make those
Well, just,
effective?
a 1 megawatt solar array is typically, 4 to 5 acres. And so these were 250 KW solar arrays. They weren't that big, an acre or two. So they weren't very large. But then again, the 1 megawatt system that we're going to put up around, or the 100 megawatt system that's going to go around the Point Beach nuclear plant is upwards, I think, of 700 acres of ground will be covered.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike.
You bet. Thank you, Mayor.
Enjoyed it, and
Yep.
information is always helpful.
Yep, and I'll follow up with Joe and get you some information on those contracts as far as the fuel mix.
Thank you, I
But
appreciate that.
this pie chart includes those contracts, the fuel mix is part of that pie chart, so.
I figured it was.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
somewhere in there.
But if you want
Okay.
the specifics on those contracts, I'll get that for you.
Yeah,
too.
I would. Thank you.
Bet. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, we'll come back to the comments and suggestions after the public hearing, so. So now we're gonna go to the public hearing. The purpose of the hearing is to hear public comment on the proposal from Mandel Group Incorporated for a proposed amendment to the City of Oconomowoc Comprehensive Land Use Plan 2010-2030 and rezoning 34.45 acres of land located on the north side of Valley Road, immediately west of Summit School. I think that's pretty much describes it. So Jason, you want to get started, and then the applicant will come up and give a brief presentation, then we'll call on public comment.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, Common Council. I'll give a brief overview of the application for the public hearing this evening. And then, yes, we'll open it up to the applicant and the public for any feedback. This is a land use plan, a comprehensive land use plan amendment. And then if that is looked upon favorably, it would be then a rezoning, which both items are on the agenda later this evening. Both of these items require public hearings at both the Plan Commission as well as the Common Council, and then a recommendation by the Plan Commission and ultimately approval by the Common Council. The site in question that we're dealing with is highlighted in red there. It's a 34-acre site. It's immediately west of the Summit Elementary School on north of Valley Road. We said it's approximately 1,600 Valley Road. It does not have a formal address at this point. I just wanted, for purposes of knowing where the site is. It's important when you're looking at a land use plan amendment to look at the surrounding uses for context of where is this going? Will it be compatible with the adjacent uses? So I thought I would just kind of show what is surrounding this property. To the north, we have Chapman Park, which will be open space in perpetuity. It's a municipal park. To the east, we'll go that way. And there's also Lake Country Trail, which is an important asset to this site. Right now, to the north, adjacent to the trail is Business Park, and I'll show that later, but it's good to have residential use next to a trail. Then going around the circle there, we have a school next to it. The school's existing, it's built. It has some fields and things to the side, and another YMCA, and then Valley Road is to the south, and on the other side of Valley Road, we have duplexes. We have single-family homes, East Lake Village, further to the east and south of Valley Road. Then moving west, we have commercial over there, and then we have some vacant land that's zoned mostly business park. There'd be a small finger of residential left over that would probably have to be taken care of at a future date. So we all kind of know the site location and the general uses. They're asking to amend the existing land use plan. You can see it's in the circled area there. To the north is Business Park, that's that teal color, and then it's single-family residential called suburban residential is to the south there. And then if that is successfully changed, they're asking to go to a high-density residential. The zoning map is asking to be amended as well. It follows the land use plan. It's business park to the north as well as suburban residential to the south. That's a single-family district similar to East Lake Village, you can see. So again, it's a land use plan change, a zoning change. The zoning would allow up to 12 dwelling units per acre. For 34 acres, that would be up over 400 dwelling units would be allowed. The applicant is asking to build no more than 315. We have that in writing from the applicant saying that they would not exceed 315. They did present a rezoning exhibit that shows the acreage and the dimensions of which land is which, so we would be rezoning the entire 34 acres. They did provide a general overview of the area. You can see a few things, the Oconomowoc Parkway to the north to a stop, and there's some parking over there. There's the farm or the fire station, and then there's some open space next to it with the parking. So it doesn't quite get to the end of the road. There'd be no road access to the Oconomowoc Parkway. The road access would be from Valley Road down here. It'd be directly across from a Gold Medal. And it's a lot of units for one access, so the applicants have committed in writing that they would extend the roadway out the west all the way to Old Schoolhouse Road. And they're just showing mixed use, commercial and office on to the west side there. They did provide a blow-up area here. There's some wetlands to the north that are shown as undisturbed, and then there's a fairly sizable detention pond for the stormwater. All the stormwater would have to be kept on site. Now, I wanted to say one more thing about this. Staff has not reviewed this for technical review. Tonight is only the land use and the zoning request. We have not done a deep dive and technical review on the stormwater, the lighting, the landscaping, the grading. All of that is still yet to come. The first step in the process is to see if this land use is acceptable. Staff does support the land use and the zoning change for various reasons. One concern that's been brought up is, are there too many apartments in the city? Well, we have a ratio identified in the land use plan as a 60% targeted number for single-family homes, 40% for duplex and multifamily. Right now, we're right at that 60-40. If we take some of that, the higher-end condos out, it changes that by 5%, so it'd be at 65-35. Then if you add these in, we're at 62-37. So we're still above the 60% threshold for single family if you take high-end condos as a single family home. There was a prior project that was not acted on by this Common Council in 2017. It was, the Common Council asked that that be removed. There was lack of detail, there wasn't a lot of information, and I think for for me to bring this forward, I'm at a much better comfort level. I wouldn't want to bring something forward the council felt was not favorable to act on. So this is much more thorough information. We have a developer with a very good track record, and I feel that it's much more complete with the traffic study being done, the market analysis, the economic impact, et cetera. The land use, we talked a little bit about that earlier. It's adjacent to a trail. I think that's a much better use than Business Park being adjacent to a trail. The residential's use should be there. Regarding traffic, you know, it'll dump out onto a county trunk highway, which is very close then to a state trunk highway, which is close to I-94. The traffic impact analysis is complete now. I've seen the results. The results are, it's on the website they've created for this, and it does say there's some improvements to Valley Road that the applicant has committed to, saying that they'll pay for at their own cost. This does add some rooftops. We've heard from potential developers in this community that they can't bring in new restaurants and retail establishments and businesses because they don't have enough rooftops down in that area. Well, this will bring in about 730 new residents for the businesses to utilize. Workers, I hear that some companies, especially in the health field, cannot bring in workers because there's not enough housing. This will bring in additional housing stock for this type of for workers. And then the utilities, the preliminary reports are done, and there was concerns at first about potential capacity issues. You know, nothing's been finalized, but we feel pretty confident that there's no real capacity issue for this particular development. This is what the apartments look like. These are not finalized. It would have to go through the Architectural Commission. Being a Pabst Farms, it's got the metal roof, the accents on the roof line, the timbers, the batten board siding. You know, it's really a good fit for Pabst Farms, but again, it is tentative. It's just something that they wanted to show you their inspiration. Part of the development would be townhomes. They have shown 3-story or 2.5-story type units for their townhomes. So it'd be a mix of units. They wouldn't all look exactly the same. There would be a clubhouse building. This building's picture's a little grainy, but it would be a nice amenity for the residents to utilize. So where do we go from here? The Plan Commission, I wanted to let you know that they recommended approval last week on August 14th. There was a 5-1-1 vote, 5 in favor, 1 against, 1 abstention. There's a public hearing scheduled tonight, which we're doing right now. It's on the agenda tonight for action. The site plan would have to come back, and the Plan Commission would have to review the parking, lighting, landscaping, grading, and the utilities. I mentioned the buildings require Architectural Commission. What you're seeing is not a final plan. There would be some additional approvals by the Common Council. This site has not been officially created. They would have to do a certified survey map and a developer's agreement for any public infrastructure that's going in of who's paying for what and what it all is all being public versus private, et cetera. You would get the final say in a lot of that. So I will wrap it up. I'll be available to answer any questions later in the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Ian?
Hi, Ian Martin, Vice President of Development for Mandel Group. This is Emily Cialdini. We'll go through the presentation for you. I think a lot of you were here last Wednesday for the Planning Commission approval, so it's kind of good news, bad news. The bad news is you're going to hear some of this again. The good news is we've cut our presentation time down by half or less. So you can start the clock on us right now. Mandel Group, we're known for building the highest quality apartments, and we're known for having the best management group in the metro area. We're proud of it. You can check out any number of websites. We also call ourselves a legacy developer. What that means is we build these things, we own them, we operate them for a long period of time. We don't build them, fill them up, and sell them. We don't outsource the management. It's all handled by in-house employees. This is just one example of sort of the durability of our project. So East Point Commons is almost 30 years old. This is what it looks like today. It's maintained great occupancy. We're going to spend about $4 million on it this year, just reinvesting in some of the common area improvements. Most of the units have already been dressed up with more modern appliances, countertops, that sort of thing. Before I turn it over to Emily, and I said this at the Planning Commission, our presentations tend to be a little wonkish in that there's a lot of detail, a lot of facts. We cite every source where we get our data from. You'll see it on the slides. We'll put a bibliography up at the end of this, so you can all check it out if you want. It's all available on our website, so people have the opportunity to get it. So bear with us if it gets a little wonkish. You know, we're not naive about this. We understand that these issues tend to be have an emotional element to them. And I think you'll hear some of that tonight. I think the challenge is to try to sift through all the information you get, empirical, emotional, and otherwise, and reach a decision. So with that, I'll turn it over to Emily.
So I just wanted to jump into describing what our program is for this project, and Jason touched on it a little bit. But we're 315 units. All the units contain private entry, so each unit has its own front door. Most of the units contain attached garages. 84% of them actually contain an attached garage. This site design with this one was really to leverage the suburban site and the large green space on it, and maintain a lot of the green space to create public parks or areas of interest, and a lot of walkable trails to encourage resident interaction, but also just to get people outside. What we're finding is people are looking for something beyond just the four walls of their apartment. They want amenity spaces and access to green space and natural environments. Almost 50% of the site is actually maintained green space. You'll notice a lot of that green space is to the north, and that was with the intention to preserve the city's investment in Chapman Park to the north. So our stormwater detention is up there. We'll maintain, enhance, and preserve about a 3-acre wetland on the north side of the project. You'll notice that our development is actually only 9.3 units per acre, whereas the residential multifamily zoning would permit 12 units per acre. So we have agreed in writing and discussed with Attorney Riffle that we would limit the density to the 315 units that we're proposing. We had our architects prepare a fly-through animation. This is a little bit different than last time, a little shorter. But really the intention behind this was to share the character and architectural features of the project, but also kind of share with you the massing and scale of the project. Everything in this is to scale, and you'll notice, you know, a lot of it looks like a lot of green space, and that's because it is. It's representative of what the project will look like. So this is coming in east on Valley Road, turning into our development here. The clubhouse, we really like to be a striking architectural feature, something that represents the character and kind of is the face of the development. It'll house our 24/7 leasing and maintenance staff, clubhouse, fitness center, a resident pool, and behind it, like I mentioned, is just an event lawn space. One thing we really try to do with all of our properties is program them. So our property managers are constantly planning community gatherings, events, and getting people interacting with each other and hanging out together. Here's one of the green space public parks area on the west side of the site. You'll notice a lot of the building styles are different. So there's actually 5 different building styles throughout the project. 2-story concept and a 2.5-story townhome concept. And here to the north is where we enter that buffer area between our project and Chapman Park. Highlight some of the native vegetation that we'll put there. We really pride ourselves on landscaping, on the quality and the amount of plantings that we put into our projects. I also have just some still frame renderings of our apartments, just to kind of highlight what Jason had talked about, the modern farmhouse aesthetic for our development, wood timbers, stone masonry, whiteboard and batten siding, huge windows. That's something we always try to put into all of our projects to make sure our units are really bright and open. These are some representative images from a project Ian and I did in Fox Point. Wanted to share them with you. It's the same target demographic as we expect to see at Paps Farms, so probably a similar finish level. We'll have designer cabinetry, stainless steel appliances, quartz countertops, double vanities, wood look flooring throughout. It's something we really like to try and highlight in all of our projects. It's something we put a lot of time and effort and money into. So we wanted to jump into why Oconomowoc needs apartments. A lot of times we hear, you know, there's so many apartments coming into my community. Is this sustainable? Is this real? So I'd like to jump into, at the national level, some demographic tailwinds that we're seeing across the country, and then relate that back to the Oconomowoc market. So first thing is that home ownership rates are at or near 48-year lows. People are marrying less frequently. They're less often having kids, especially the millennial generation. They're marrying much later in life. They're waiting to buy homes, and they're putting off household formation. And this is all important because the millennials are a huge demographic. There's 77 million people whose lifestyle and housing preferences are changing. So it's something that we as developers certainly pay attention to, understand how to accommodate this demographic going forward.
So one of the questions that came up at the Planning Commission was, well, every millennial lives downtown. And that's a common perception. We hear it a lot. The statistical reality, the fact is that more millennials live in the suburbs or further out than in the city. This is U.S. Census Bureau data. It's the reality of it. So I know it's contrary to popular perception, but that's the facts of it. Emily talked a lot about the millennials. The other piece of this that you have to think about are the empty nesters. So empty nesters are important for a couple reasons. One, after the millennials, they're they're the largest age cohort. If you think about why baby boomers and empty nesters want to live in apartments, it's pretty simple. They don't want to cut the grass anymore. They don't want to mow the lawn anymore. When your dishwasher breaks at home, it's on you to fix it or call somebody to fix it. When your dishwasher breaks in an apartment, you call our management group and we're there to fix it for you. So it's just a much easier lifestyle. For a lot of people, it gives them more flexibility and mobility too. So if you're a retired person and you want to spend, we all live in Wisconsin, so January isn't hospitable. If you want to spend the month in Arizona or Florida, it's much easier to leave behind an apartment than a house. Our maintenance group takes care of it. You don't have to worry about it. It's there for you when you come back.
So at the Oconomowoc level, there's a couple things we study to look at apartment demand and supply. The first thing is just the apartment market fundamentals in the area. So the Oconomowoc area has declining vacancy and increased year-over-year rent growth. So just strong projections currently with all product currently in the market, but also projecting going forward. So we do our own independent market research. For this project, we actually hired a third-party consultant, Megan Berg Research, and a component of their market study is what they call the marginal demand analysis. And this is just really an estimate on the number of apartment units needed to accommodate projected growth in a certain community. So how they do that is they look at the increase in renter-occupied households for a given community or area over a period of time. So for this project, they looked at the increase in renter-occupied households from 2018 to 2023, and they estimated that that's about 1,027 households or 1,027 units of unmet apartment demand. They then take the number of units in the pipeline plus our project and apply a certain balanced market occupancy rate of 95%. So that's 644 units. which are going to be brought to the market. I did want to touch on the number of units in the pipeline because we think there's a pretty big difference between what they're considering competition or comparable units. First is 110 units of Wongard's Olympia Fields redevelopment. This is a workforce housing development, different rental rate. We don't think it'll necessarily compete with our project. The remaining 268 units are almost all senior living. So that means age-restricted, independent living, and senior living properties. Again, we left them in the analysis because we think it's important to look at, but we don't think that our project will necessarily compete with those. Even leaving those within our analysis, there's still an unmet demand for 383 units, meaning beyond our project, beyond what's going to be developed, 383 more households are going to be looking for apartment units.
So a couple things, couple nuances on that real quick. So you'll see this says income eligible renter households. So, and by the way, this is on our website. We've out to everybody so you can look at all this whenever you want. But the income eligible is important because we look at our average rent and we actually limit the number of households that could live here based on, they have to earn essentially three. So this number here of 20,226, 21,000, that's not the whole number. It's less because not everybody has the income required to qualify for an apartment here. If you look at this data, you'll see, or the report that we published, there's 3 or 4 different methodologies that developers all look at, and this is probably the most straightforward one. Another one that I like to talk about is you look at a capture rate, and all that means is say, okay, out of all the people that are going to rent an apartment in Oconomowoc or in the trade area, how many of those people do we have to capture to reach 95%? And in this case, it's actually less than 2 people apartment in the trade area. That's a pretty strong signal of how much demand there is for apartments. So if 100 people come to this trade area looking to rent an apartment, we only have to get 2 of them. Project successful. We think based on all the stuff Emily talked about, our operations, our finish, our design, all of that, we don't think that's hope to achieve a lot capture than that.
Another question we've gotten is why 315 units? Why not 412? Why not 200? And the easiest way to really break that down is by looking at 3 things. One is the market demand, which we covered. We know that there's demand for apartments above and beyond our project, so that's the starting point. The second thing is looking at the type of product. So we feel that this 2-story, 2.5-story garden-style apartment is a right product type for the neighborhood, but also for the demographic that we're looking to attract to our properties. Baby boomers looking for single or first floor units that have 2-3 bedrooms with an attached garage. This is likely the right product or a product that they would seek out. I also touched on how we wanted to maintain a lot of the green space on site. So 315 units allows us to create those public parks and have enough area for stormwater detention. But the third thing is really economies of scale. So at 300 units, we can really efficiently operate a property. We don't have to, we can staff the property with the right amount of people that makes that efficient and makes that run well.
The best way to think of it is it takes the same number of people to maintain 125 units. So in order for us to deliver the sort of quality of operations we want, falls in that sweet spot.
The other side of that is diseconomies of scale. So with other projects, we've seen, urban product at 650 units. We start to, see diseconomies of scale when it comes to maintenance or leasing staff required to run those properties. Just because they're so big, it takes leasing staff a while to bring someone through all the different units because we have different finishes or unit styles. Lots of amenity spaces among that property, and then just a lot of maintenance required with 650 units. So Jason touched on this a little bit, but just wanted to highlight all of these, demographic trends and market studies lead us to believe that, this is a great site for us for our project, but also just generally in terms of the surrounding uses and access to freeways and employment centers, we feel like this is a perfect site for multifamily. With the access to 94, you have access to Madison, Milwaukee, Waukesha, Wauwatosa, all those huge employment centers. But also, even though this is a suburban site, you still have a lot of walkability with the nearby retail. And as Jason kind of touched on as well, none of the surrounding uses are single-family residential. And oftentimes, planners talk about how multifamily residential can be a really good buffer to transition single-family neighborhoods to higher intense uses, such as commercial or these institutional uses.
There's a market reality to this planning discussion too, in that we've heard from some folks that, well, you should just build more single-family homes. The reality is the market hasn't supported that, right? This site has been available for single-family developers for 20-plus years, and nobody showed up to develop it there. And I think there's some obvious answers why. I mean, one is it's just closer to the more intensive commercial and business uses as you go west. It's got institutional uses. Fairly obvious reasons why I think single-family owner or developers haven't shown up to build on this particular site.
So what we feel is that for communities to be successful, there really has to be this life cycle housing where baby boomers who may be looking for that maintenance-free lifestyle or downsize relocate to apartments, thereby freeing up single-family houses for millennials when they're ready to move into. So it's important that successful communities offer this complete package of housing options.
So we had a neighborhood meeting a couple of weeks ago. About 10 to 15 people showed up. We had the planning commission meeting, obviously, so we've been able to glean some of the issues that folks were most concerned about. I think the one that comes to the top of the list that we hear the most frequently is the traffic issue. So we hired our traffic engineer to prepare a traffic study. It's on our website. We've given it to the city. Our traffic engineer are here tonight, so since it was such an important topic, I thought I would ask them to come here and you guys can shoot all the questions you want their way. When you look at the traffic study, it's clear. This project does not create a traffic problem on Valley Road. The traffic study suggests that we make certain improvements, like a left turn lane into the site. So we've agreed to do that, as Jason said. The traffic engineers they do all of this based on empirical data, and again, you can talk to the traffic engineer who's here, the expert in the room, about what his methodologies are and how he reaches that conclusion. So that's what the data says. There's some obvious reasons for why the data says that. It is empirically true that multifamily generates less traffic than single family. So that's an accepted proposition. I should have mentioned here, it's interesting, we did look at the existing zoning that's in place now to sort of gauge, okay, if you just built what you could by right, so without asking for any rezonings, what would the traffic impact be of that? And it's a little bit less cars per day, but what really matters is peak hour traffic. So in the mornings when you're commuting to work, or in the evenings when you're coming home from work or kids are coming out of school, there's actually there would be more traffic conditions based on the existing zoning than what we're proposing now. There's been some confusion about whether or not we would have so all that being said, there's still a couple of things that we think are important. One is the secondary access point. So Some of the early site plans, I would admit, were a little misleading on this because it said future connection for that east-west road, and I think that's what's in your package. So just to be clear, what we have proposed is we will build an east-west road that connects the apartments to Old Schoolhouse as part of our project. That's what we propose, that's what we're committed to doing. At the Planning Commission meeting, a question came up about, well, would it be better to tie that connection, not to Old Schoolhouse, but to Oconomowoc Parkway? So we can talk to the traffic engineers about it. I have, you know, it's a little bit of a horse apiece. I don't know if one is more expensive than the other from a linear footage distance. But what I'm here to propose is we'll build whichever one the city thinks makes the most sense and what the residents thinks the most sense. There's some challenges going up to Oconomowoc Parkway with the trail. You know, you have to figure out how to cross a pretty popular trail, but that's been done, so we could probably figure that out. And then whatever the next connection is, we would propose that be left on the table as to be built when when the balance of the site develops out, if it's required, that second connection would be made. So let's say we connected to Oconomowoc Parkway today. The idea would be, in the future, when necessary, the connection would get made to Old Schoolhouse. The reality is there's, all the statistics aside, all the empirical data aside, the reality is that there's a perception, and you'll hear it, that Valley Road is unsafe or people are concerned about it. If we build this project, I have all the same concerns for my residents. The last thing we need is having our residents call us and complain about safety issues on Valley Road. So people may not believe it, but our interests are not that disaligned with most folks that live off of Valley Road now. So to that end, we have tried to explore, do some brainstorming about some alternative safety measures that we could install on or next to Valley Road to help correct the perception, to help slow traffic any way we can. So there's a whole number of ways you can do it. And again, you can ask the engineers. You can do things like put, speed bumps essentially for pedestrian crossings. You can do landscape medians. Little things like narrowing up the road, even if it's visually with bike lanes and landscaping, that actually helps slow traffic. My favorite one is the speed reader, the guilt trip machine, right? You put it out there and it says speed limit's 25, you're going 32. Those things are effective and they work. One of the reasons I like that for this particular project is we don't need the county's approval to do that, right? So Valley Road is a county road. So to some extent, the county's gonna have to weigh in here. The county has seen our traffic study. They replied today saying they agreed with it. So we, that's the feedback we've gotten to date. The best way to add some of these improvements, some of these supplemental sort of traffic slowing devices like a speed reader, is if the city and the residents and Mandel all sort of lean on the county to approve some of those things.
Another question or comment we get is, what's your project going to have and how are they going to burden Summit Elementary and Silver Lake Intermediate? So we did sit down with Roger Rindo and Brian Stuckey, school superintendent and principal at Summit Elementary. They have done a lot of long-term planning and studies to estimate the demand that their schools will have to accommodate, and what they told us, and I think what they shared with you via email through Jason, is that there really is no capacity issue at either one of these schools. They're well positioned to accommodate more children at both schools. The reality of it is that apartments typically don't generate a lot of school-age children. That's partly due to the demographic trends that we talked about. But I did break it down to look at how many school-age children we tend to have in our properties, broke it down to urban versus suburban. Urban properties obviously don't have hardly any children. Suburban is slightly higher, about 6 children per 100 units. So for this project, we'd estimate about 14 to 18 school-age children. This is also a topic of conversation at the Plan Commission. So broke this out to look at our project versus the amount of students that a single-family home or subdivision would generate. So for 100 units, which would be the entire proposed apartment site, a national statistic would be 64 school-age children. You know, I broke it down to actually the Oconomowoc 3-mile demographics, looking at how many school-age children live in the area, and it's very comparable to the national average. We'd estimate about 61 units based on that. We also met with the Paps Farms YMCA. They were super supportive of our project and development. We're actually working on cross collaboration ideas, whether that be people from the YMCA teaching swim lessons or hosting yoga classes on our pool deck or event lawn space. Excited to work with them on other ideas.
A quick note about the school-age children issue, and this happened at the Planning Commission, so this isn't news to some folks that were there, but there's a temptation to try to turn this apartment project into some more global analysis of the performance of the Oconomowoc School District. And I think there could be a valid concern from residents about, is the Oconomowoc School District as great as they would like it to be? Now, we look at the rankings because it's important to us. We don't have a lot of kids, but it's good school districts are typically sort of representative of all kinds of other good things, good single-family households, college-educated populations, all those sort of things. But if there's questions about, you know, what's the right student-teacher ratio for Oconomowoc schools, I can't help answer those questions. I'm not an educator. I'm not an expert on it. But what I can say is the question is not, does this project somehow hurt Oconomowoc schools? The reality is this project doesn't really have much of anything to do with Oconomowoc schools. Emily showed you the data that's out there. The other piece of this that we just learned when we just saw the letter from the school district tonight, there's a data point out there that's real time. So the Prairie Preserve project that Vanguard did on the north side of town has 378 units, I think, and they have 12 school-age children out of 378 units. So there's real live data here for people to understand. Okay, so the architecture, is it a duck or is it a rabbit? The point is just that we have to go through a process to figure out whether or not the architecture meets the expectations of the city. We're proud of what we do. Reasonable minds can disagree about what good architecture is. We're willing to go through the process, and I think we could figure it out. We've heard from some folks that there's just not enough restaurants, not enough retail the way we hoped out here. The reality is that restaurants, retail respond to rooftops and disposable income. So we hired Baker Tilly to do a third-party economic impact study. You can see some of the data here. That's on our website. I'm not saying that this apartment project's gonna, would all of a sudden source all kinds of, 100,000 square feet of great retail and restaurant space, but would it have a positive impact on it? It would. Burden on public services. Another concern we've heard from several folks. Our apartment project is all private utilities, private service. So we contract and pay for all the trash service. We do all the internal road maintenance. We take care of our snow removal. If a utility within the site breaks, that's on us to fix. If you compare that to a single-family development, all that infrastructure is public. So if you're trying to do a calculus as to whether single-family or multifamily has less burden on the public budget, it's pretty clear.
Another question we often get is who's going to live here? Who are your residents going to be? And really the easiest way to break that down is to look at the income required to live at to live at this property. So we looked at the average 2-bedroom, 2-bath residence, which is our most populous unit, divided that by 30%, which is the income required to live there, and that yields an income of $75,000. We compared that to the median household income for Oconomowoc, and that's almost exactly the same. So the people living at our property are going to be very similar to the people who are already living in Oconomowoc. Another question we get is on crime. Is your property going to cause more crime in the area? The third-party research suggests that apartments actually create less demand for police than a comparable number of single-family houses. This may be due in part to the fact that they're active environments with a lot of people, a lot of eyes on the street. We'll also have our 24/7 property management staff there. I tried to verify this with our independent statistics. And I'm not trying to compare Oconomowoc to Fox Point here, but it's just the empirical data that I have that I analyzed to compare crime in one of our apartment properties, Beaumont Place, versus a nearby municipality that happened to be Fox Point. What the data says is that for our projects, there's no more crime in one of our developments than there is in the nearby municipality. One other question that often comes up is are your apartments going to be decretive to my home value? Again, third-party research suggests that no, that's not the case. Actually, it suggests a lot of sources suggest the opposite, stating that homes near apartment development, well-planned, well-landscaped, high-quality development actually increase in value. Again, I tried to verify this with research in a comparable community where we've developed, and our independent research confirms the same, that after our project was built, home values actually decreased, or home values increased near our project versus the entire municipality. Home values tended to decrease across the municipality. This is true in Whitefish Bay near our project Beaumont Place, and this is also true in the city of Brookfield near one of our developments, Prairie Walk.
So one of the comments that we got at Planning Commission was it's important to hold the developer accountable for all the number of promises that we've made through the course of these meetings and this presentation. I agree with that. What I think will happen is we'll enter into a development agreement with the city. That development agreement will contain any number of provisions and obligations that will be imposed on us. There were 3 that were critical to the Planning Commission. I've noted them here. And so our expectation is that will be the same issue here, that we'll sign a development agreement. The city will have rights to enforce all those obligations against us. And we understand that's the case. I noticed that there was something on the agenda about the TIF proposal we've made. And so I just want to clarify real quick on that. We have not made a formal TIF proposal. In some of the early conversations that we had with the staff, and Jason mentioned this, we thought there could be a sanitary sewer pinch point, meaning that there wasn't enough capacity for the full build-out of Paps Farms. So we heard that, and we thought, well, this project could be a real opportunity to solve that pinch point, help facilitate the development of the balance of Paps Farms. The tax increment here is enough to easily amortize the cost of that sanitary sewer improvement. So it just seemed to us it was an opportunity for the city to solve a potential future problem and do so in a way that involved no city risk. All that being said, and so that's our position on it. If the city decides that they're not interested, then so be it. I mentioned the bibliography. You can see it here. This is all our sources, the best one being the U.S. Census Bureau, so readily available information.
Thank you. We'll open it up for public comment now. Anybody has a comment to make on this proposal? I'll get to you in a second. Please fill out a blue card. As it states on the card, comments should be limited to 3 minutes or less, and do not duplicate what someone else has already said. So let's try to keep it to that time frame and criteria. So Michael Strong, you're first.
Thank you. My name is Michael Strong. I live in East Lake Village. And I want to thank the Mandel Group for a fine presentation that we had here this evening. I like the proposal. I'm not against it. My concern is Valley Road. I really believe we need to protect Valley Road. We can tweak it just a little bit. In doing so, it's going to be good for the city of Oconomowoc. We want development. We want growth. So this project has a lot to offer all of us, okay? It's good for the Mandel Group. We want them to be a good partner with us, okay? We want this to be good for their residents. And we also want it to be good for our local residents where I live and that stuff. And we also want it to be reasonably safe for our school and reasonably accessible for the YMCA. When you make this decision, you know, you're going to look at it, you're going to make it what's in the best interest of everyone. And in my thoughts, one of the things that we can do is actually just take this project and rather than running it north and south onto Valley Road, run it east and west. Put the traffic up on Oconomowoc Parkway, which happens to be 4 lanes, and the Old School Road, which is available to 4 lanes. It's much easier to dissipate traffic with 4 lanes than when it's subject to 2 lanes. Now, let me talk about Valley Road. Valley Road is a 2-lane road. It's a narrow road, and within a few hundred yards right now, there are 6 access points, okay? Gold Medal Drive, which was mentioned, that comes from Pabst Farms condo. The school drop-off area, which is actually right next to this project right here. The school parking lot for buses and teachers, staff, and things like that. Right across the street is Pabst Farm Circle, access road. Many parents drop their children off there, walk across the road to and from school. There's the entrance to the YMCA. Parents dropping off daycare, people going to the Y. Behind the Y, there's obviously the baseball fields. The Y gets used a lot, okay? And right across from the YMCA, there's East Lake Road, which is the road to my subdivision. A few hundred yards down the road, there's also Dairy Boulevard. I know that's not Oconomowoc, but yet it's Summit, and the reason I say it, it's the Lake Country Village. There's a lot of building going on right there, okay? Last year, there was maybe a half a dozen homes. Now there's 50, 60. Next year, maybe 100, 110, whatever. The point here is that there's going to be a lot of activity on that road. It's a high-activity road right now. I know you're going to hear a study on traffic and everything else. I might be just a little bit of have an angle on that because I bike across it every day, I walk across it, I drive it every day. So I see what's on the road. So I have a little bit of an advantage that way. Traffic will do nothing but increase with the developments going on at the condos and at the Newman. Even if we do not do this project, and again, I'm not against the project, I'm for it. I really believe if we turn the project, it's got a better proposal for all. The project itself, if you look at it, there's a lot of good things about it. The grounds and the buildings being maintained by the individuals, that's a good thing for the city. We like that. I think we all like that. But if you look at the animation that they brought up there, okay, they brought you in off of Valley Road, they showed you cars are on it, it's busy, you get into this area, there's people, there's cars. This is going to be an active community. You know, there's going to be people. These people are working people. They're going to be going to their employments. The number one thing and the number one reason that they showed they want to go through and their residents want is they want to have this ease of access on and off the highway. What better way to give them ease and access on and off the highway? Get them up on, I don't remember, Oconomowoc Parkway, get them up on Old School Road, get them out that way and that stuff. It's better for their residents, okay? They're gonna have what, they made a comment on the planning committee, roughly 740 cars. Well, you know, sometimes it's not only just the cars, but you've got, you know, being an active community, you've got people walking, bicycles, you know, and if these are millennials, as they truly are, they're going to be calling Amazon. You're going to have Amazon delivery, you're going to have UPS trucks coming in there, you're going to have other things come in there. So it's like every other community. It's not just 1 or 2 things, okay? Everybody's coming in there. So safety and accessibility on Valley Road is extremely important to me. I really believe that we want to maintain manageable and reasonably safe conditions on that road for everyone involved, for the city, for the school, and for the Y. All right, I thank you for the consideration.
Thank you. Greg Voss.
For the opportunity. I'm a Connemoc resident for 26 years, and I thought the presentations were always very well done. My comment, I had a lot of other comments, but they were pretty well addressed with the presentation that had a lot of data and a lot of blue sky data telling us how good it's going to be. But a data point is a data point. It's not necessarily an Oconomowoc data point. We are a unique organization, a unique city with unique values. And I think the Common Council has their work cut out for them to really determine, is this what we want? Do we want to have another 700 cars on those roads? Think about it, 67 at work time is jammed. Adding another bunch of cars, who knows how many, it's going to make it a lot worse. We have to really be careful. The presentation needs to be looked at by you folks, the Common Council, item by item, and decide if this is what we want. Now, apartment people, and I've lived in an apartment, but apartment people are, in a generic term, are more transient than community. Homeowners are community. And I think there's a difference there. I'm not suggesting apartments are bad. I'm suggesting that you have to be careful how many you do. We've had development on Wisconsin Avenue, across from St. Paul's Church, big developments. Over on Highway P and Z, by Piggly Wiggly, big developments. And to be known as a city of only big developments, I think is contrary to what I am used to in Oconomowoc. So I just ask that the Common Council really be diligent in their deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane?
I guess I first want to say that for as long as I've lived here, which is about 16 years, we've gone from having 28 vacant stores and a rundown street to having a fabulous city now. I wanted to move away from here for about 10 of the 15 years, 16 years I lived here. Now I'm fighting to stay and retire here. I guess I have one question initially for them, which I would like to answer afterwards, is when they say that the ratio of 60-40 and now it's like 62-38, is that including the units that have not been built? So I know there's supposed to be like 100 plus units at Olympia. Are your figures including the units that are supposed to be built or that already exist, the split between what's residential and apartments? And I don't know the answer to that, maybe you do. I think that as an Oconomowoc resident, I don't really want to see this town grow anymore. I think what makes this place charming is exactly what we have now. And as far as businesses, you know, millennials, they don't shop. They don't go to malls. We don't need a mall here. It's proven millennials don't go to stores. They go to restaurants, but they order online. They don't frequent malls. We don't need a mall here. I'm not sure we need any more stores unless there's small, more, you know, mom and pop, very boutique-y type stores. Baby boomers, they mentioned this at the last meeting, but they managed to not do it today. Baby boomers on your graphs were 58, from 48 to 65. I'm sorry, that's not a baby boomer. Baby boomers from 58 to 75 and on up. I don't see people that age moving into a 3-story, which you may call it a 2.5-story, with all these steps. So there was a study that came out only today, it was released. And Europe is about 10 years ahead of us on this. So Europeans have, for the last 10 years, managed to find a way to keep seniors in their homes because it's a lot more cost effective. They're not trying to move them into retirement homes. The reason we don't really need all these apartments because we don't have any workers. Every single business in this town and in every other town across this country is looking for workers. There are not enough employees anywhere. I don't care if you're a tradesperson, you're retail, you're flipping burgers, you're working at an advertising agency. There aren't enough people to hire. And we're worried about bringing more people in. What are these people going to do here? You know, we don't have the workers. We have the jobs, but we don't have workers. So here we are looking to construct more units, and I'm not sure that we have it. So what they've done in Europe is they've managed to feed people subsidies from the government, which is what all our politicians are talking about doing, but they're keeping, you know, retirees and baby boomers and whatever, the elderly, into their own single-family homes. You know, I'm a retiree. I'm a baby boomer plus. I would like to be able to stay in a ranch. I have a ranch. I can stay in that house forever if I want to. I would never see a baby boomer moving into that. I don't see a millennial moving out to a Economowoc unless you have a specific, more high-end job. Because Bayview, Wauwatosa, and the east side are where most of the millennials are moving here in Milwaukee now. And I don't think you compare, I used to live in Fox Point, I don't think you compare the east side to what we have going on out here. It's a totally different community, and who's moving there. I'm sorry, I just make a lot of notes here. As far as, we did a $69 million referendum. I spoke to about 5 different families this week who all have people in the high school, and I know you didn't address the high school. Maybe high school students wouldn't be moving in there, but I'm not sure we can rule them out. What I was told is, all of a sudden there's a shortage in parking. The parking is going to a lottery at the high school, and they're asking the seniors to not give up their lockers this year because they don't have enough lockers at the high school because there are too many students. This is coming from families and parents of people who are in our high school. So, you know, I'm not saying high school students are moving into these apartments, but I don't think you can rule out the whole education component here. I personally, I don't like paying taxes. I don't think our taxes are exorbitant. I think for what we get in this town, it's an extremely fair system that we have going here. I would like to talk about something besides this. That's all I want to talk about that. No, I thought this was for all public comments.
This is just for public
This is
hearing.
just for this?
Just for the public hearing. You can
Okay,
come
well,
back
I'm
up-
still, okay.
You can come back up later.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on the public hearing? Please fill out a card. Please, yeah, we want to get this moving forward, so. We have a lot to debate yet. Matt, you can go first.
I'll try to avoid repeating some of the comments that were already made. I do live in East Lake Village. So I guess first I'll address the zoning issue. You know, currently we know it's zoned for single-family residential and business park. Last week's meeting, it was voted to recommend changing that to high-density multifamily. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the Paps Farms community was marketed as a luxury high-end development. I don't know, you know, how high-density multifamily housing is considered luxurious. You know, the documents that were submitted to the Mandel Group by the city claims that, or to the city, I'm sorry, they claim that they provide a more accessible option compared to buying. You know, to me, that means affordable, or in other words, not luxurious. When relocating to Oconomowoc, my family and I, we did rent a home. We rented in Whitman Hills neighborhood to make sure the community fit our needs as well as the school district. Our backyard basically was the Whitman Hills apartment complex, and that was not a nice environment. Cars were constantly coming and going, all you know, times of the day and night. Oftentimes the paramedics were there frequently, you know, so it's just a lot more traffic, just a lot more commotion, something that I don't think that we necessarily want in the Paps Farms area. You know, honestly, if I knew that this development was a consideration, I probably wouldn't have bought a home in the Paps Farms neighborhood. I would have looked elsewhere in the community. You know, with the increased number of residents, you know, there's gonna inherently be more traffic and more emergency calls. So, you know, going to the traffic, you know, the Mandel Group claims that there won't be an increase in traffic and that it'll actually decrease on Valley Road. I truly do not believe this. I believe it's gonna drastically increase. You know, it was discussed last week that it's believed that traffic's gonna move west on Valley Road to Highway 67 and then to I-94. I disagree with this. People are gonna move east on Valley Road and go to P to hit I-94 unless they're gonna be going west on 94. That's what I do. I work in Milwaukee. I'm not gonna go wait, you know, 4 traffic lights to get to 94 when I can hit 1 stop sign and a couple roundabouts. You know, I think you're gonna need more than just a left-hand turn lane and a stoplight. You're gonna need to widen the road. So when you widen the road, what's gonna happen? The offsets that are already small from the condos to the road are gonna get even smaller, as well as the homes that are in East Lake Village. Addressing the thought about the secondary access going to Old School Road, I don't think that's a viable option. I don't think many people will take that route if they're living in that complex, of course, unless you live in the back end of it. And then thinking about going to Oconomowoc Parkway, the fire station's right there. Do we think adding more traffic right in front of the fire station makes a whole lot of sense? I don't think so. Moving on to the target market, claiming baby boomers and millennials. So baby boomers, I don't know that they're gonna wanna go up 3 flights of stairs. Typically, I think they're looking for more single-story residents. Millennials relocating to the suburbs. I actually did find an article where they stated some millennials are moving out to the suburbs, but these are older millennials. You know, they're moving out to the suburbs as they're starting to drive down their student loan debt and starting families. But they're not looking for apartments. They're looking for single-family homes. And, you know, part of that is coming from that reduced debt, as I mentioned, as well as a strong economy. The affordability side of this, you know, last meeting it was mentioned 315 units they were bringing to Oconomowoc. You know, we were shown a map of the major employers within a 39-minute commute from Oconomowoc, you know, so which claimed that that's the average commute time for an Oconomowoc resident. So in one breath, we're hearing we're trying to bring workers to the community. Another breath, we're hearing it's an easy commute. So which is it? We're trying to get workers or we're trying to get commuters? I'm confused. And then as far as the salary requirements for someone who rents, you know, $75,000 per year. If I'm a single income family, that equates to $36 an hour. If we're truly trying to bring workers to the community, I fail to see which, you know, businesses in the community are offering that type of wage. I know it's not Taco Bell or Ben Franklin or Walgreens, so I don't know where these jobs are. And then lastly, I'll just address the school impact a little bit. I don't think 14 to 18 kids is realistic. In my personal opinion, I think it's more realistic to think it'd be around 100 kids, but I don't have any true data to back that up. But, you know, it seems like a lot of people have been focused on the effect of Summit Elementary, but I don't think we can stop there. Summit only goes to 4th grade. Those kids grow up, they move on to Silver Lake, they move on to the high school. And so some of those things have already been talked about, so I won't drag that on any further.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Holly, I do want to keep these comments to 3 minutes or less.
My name is Holly. I live in East Lake Village, and actually my house backs Valley Road, which is the major point of my questioning. So I commend Mandel on improving and consolidating your cell, but I think it's still missing some key objective statistics. And moving forward, I would hope that the municipality would look at a secondary analysis by a third party that's chosen by yourself, because otherwise I could appraise my own house. We need to look at the ramifications of not working in a vacuum, and I doubt that the Summit development, which is right behind my house, traffic implications have been taken into consideration, because they are also, although a different municipality, sharing our same common resources. And it is a major concern of mine. I don't have kids that go to the school system. I don't belong to the Y. Safety in general is a concern, but neither of those things are on my radar. It's mainly the traffic patterns. And if my yard becomes infringed upon because there has to be a widening. So some of the solutions that were proposed were a median, some decorative landscaping. That is going to impact my property. The other thing is that what are the longitudinal projections? We looked at, if the traffic study is looking at this development extant in its entirety, what about the future developments that are in the area on 67, and again in Summit, because there's multifamily housing already being proposed, I think approved, in that Newman development. So those people, again, are still gonna be using Pick and Save, they're still gonna be using the Y, they're still going to be impacting the traffic right where this development is. I guess those are my biggest concerns. whether this was a good use of the land at the time. I don't know, obviously, the city has to make a financial decision on what's the most efficacious for the long-term plan, but is this really going to have the highest impact for the use of the land and what the possible consequences to it would be?
Thank you. Amanda?
All right, so I want to touch base with the student ratio. I just wanted you guys to know, okay, so we moved back to Wisconsin. My son is in 8th grade now. When he was in 6th grade, because of where we were living, his school was Silver Lake, which he's still in Silver Lake because he's in 8th grade right now. Something warranted me as a parent to want to show up to the school to observe how math is being taught, because back two years ago, they were teaching Common Core math, and we were up until midnight on YouTube trying to figure out how these teachers were teaching to get the answer, because that's all they focused on was how just getting the answer, not how they got it, because they didn't require showing work. Okay, so I showed up to the school and I said,
Excuse me, what does this have to do with the
ratio.
the zoning?
This has something to do with the student ratio. I showed up to
We're
the,
really talking about land use and zoning, not student to teacher ratio.
you're not talking about student ratio as Ian presented it?
It's not part of this, it's part of land use and zoning.
Okay,
Student ratio mix
Then-
is
Mayor,
about
I'm
the
going to,
school.
Then
as a point of
be
order,
prepared.
I think she should get the chance to talk about what's been talked about tonight.
Yeah.
And presented by the developers.
if that's the case, if you're gonna deny me from explaining about the ratio, then it is upon my request from all of you council members to have an objective party to audit all of this before rendering a decision. Is that okay?
It's up to you, Mayor, what,
It's upon our request, and I'm sure I'm not the only one.
did raise, the
Okay,
fact that
since they brought it
the
up.
student,
Go ahead.
the student will be less in this development than if you developed it in its current zoning.
Her question is about student ratio,
Yeah, I know,
teacher
but
ratio.
they brought
Okay,
it up.
since they brought it up, you can go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
When I showed up in the class, there was 32 students with one teacher. 32 students with one teacher. They had 2 parents, volunteer parents, to help to make sure that it was chaotic. I sat down and I observed. I saw on the projector all of the answers. Not how they got the answer, all of the answers. These kids look like deer in headlights. To me, my concern is be prepared. You make a decision. I'm not objecting to their plan. They can scale it down. The thing is if you're going to have that, be prepared to have a referendum. Be prepared, because you have that many kids. These kids are going to move on. You're focusing on Summit Elementary, whereas you have a community full of 315 units with however many kids these kids grow up. But be prepared. Scale it down. Have it contingent on scaling it down. I guess that's my concern. Okay.
Gary Erdman?
Thank you, Your Honor and Alderman. I'm 100% in favor of this project. I've lived in Oconomowoc for 53 years. I just think it's a great use for Pabst Farms. I always thought when Pabst Farms 20 years ago was going in that there would be some apartments out there and it would help that development flourish. I grew up on Valley Road back in the 1960s and 1970s, and I could play kickball in the street. There was no cars. There was no traffic. All that traffic has developed over the years with East Lake Village and Pabst Farms and Pick and Save, and the road maybe should have been wide. Maybe prior councils should have considered that, but this development is not creating the problem that, at least perceived problem on Valley Road. I think the city has done an okay job with Valley Road, but I think there could be some future improvements to widen that road. But me personally, I'm a small business owner in Oconomowoc. I employ some millennials that are from out of state that have come to work here in Oconomowoc. They would live in apartments like this. My daughter just graduated from college. She's in an apartment in Pewaukee. She could live in something like this. I have a family member that just retired and sold a home in Oconomowoc, and they wanted a high-end apartment, and they moved to a Mandel project out of Oconomowoc. They love the Mandel project, but they want to be back in Oconomowoc. So these are the type of people that live. The millennials do live there. The empty nesters do live there. Maybe I'll live there someday. I don't know. I'm one who would prefer to stay in a single-family home, so I probably won't. But I think it will be good for Oconomowoc. I think it'll help with some of the other development in the area. I think flipping it the other direction onto the Parkway does not make sense, because I don't think you want the business park part of it down on Valley Road. I think that should stay over more towards the old Brennan's side and the old Schoolhouse Road, and I think this is great next to the YMCA. So I really encourage my alderman, Charlie Shaw and Mr. Ellis here, Kevin, to support it. And the other aldermen, remember, there's more than just a handful of residents in Oconomowoc that are against this in East Lake Village. There's 17,000 people in this community. And I've seen what's happened with Wongard's project, and it does not have a lot of children. I know people that live there. I do business with some people there. It does not have a lot of impact on our schools. And this project probably won't bring your workforce housing that we do need, because we have an issue with the service. You know, I go out to a restaurant, I want service, but yet none of the restaurants or any of the service industry can find employees. Well, maybe that'll come in the Wongard development over by Olympia, or something that Harrow's are doing on the other side of town, I don't know. But there is a demand for this type of housing. And we don't create the demand. The demand is, the demographics are changing, housing needs are changing, what people want to live in is changing. And the demand for single-family housing is much less today than it was prior. And we're still gonna have single-family housing out in the suburbs here, but I really do encourage you to support this, consider the rest of the people in the community. I think one of the members or the neighbors showed up and said that, 10 years ago, downtown was dead. There was nothing going on here. But now we've had more development, we've had more activity, and downtown is thriving. And I like to see it as 53 years of me living in Oconomowoc. I've seen Oconomowoc grow and develop, and I think we've done a good job. I think the city has done a really good job, and I ask you to please consider approving this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Bill Mooney? Is there anybody else that wants to speak yet? Okay, go ahead.
Bill Mooney, I want to thank you for having us here and giving us this forum to speak. There were a lot of facts that were given up on the screen, and I hope that, I know you guys were facing this way when they've given the facts either tonight or at the planning commission meeting.
We have screens.
I'm sorry?
We have screens.
And that was my hope.
Yeah.
That was my hope. I'd hope that on those small screens you could see the small print. Ian liked to talk about emotion and how there's going to be emotion charge. I'm here to bring facts. The facts are a lot of the data points that they've given over last presentation and then tonight were old. The traffic pattern that they claim to be an expert on and have all the data on, one of their data points that they gave was from 1997, 22 years old. Why would they have to cherry pick data like that? You see, I think they're like a magician where they want to show you the data points that point to why you should approve the project. But a good magician, when they take out their handkerchief and they wad it up and they show it and they point, they want you to look here where they're pointing, but I want to talk about what's in the other hand. There was a question that was brought up over here earlier, I think in the back, where he said he didn't have the data about schools. Schools are a big deal. When we do talk about ratios, it's important, and it's important in the context of what is it going to cost us to rectify the ratios. When I was here at the Planning Commission last time, I talked about the Summit School. I brought that up. I brought up the high school. It's an 18-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio. It's out of whack. The state ratio is 16-to-1 right now. So Oconomowoc schools are already exceeding what the state ratio is by 2 students per teacher. Why is that important? Because we value our schools here. You know, when we brought all of you into your current roles, we hoped for two things. We hope that you'd protect our kids and those interests, and we hope that you'd make decisions that kept us fiscally responsible. And when you look at the ratio itself, if you want to rectify a ratio, you do it by reducing the amount of kids, or you do it by hiring teachers. Now, they're right. When they go and talk to Brian Stuckey, and they ask him about capacity, there's no capacity issue at Summit. They're right. There's not. But the student-teacher ratio is off. There's an empty classroom there right now, but they don't have enough teachers employed to get our ratio into alignment. And that's why ratios are important. So again, they're gonna show you something and say, oh, capacity's not an issue. We talked to Roger Rindo and we talked to Brian Stuckey, it's not an issue, but they're not showing you what's in the other hand. They're gonna try and minimize it. And that's not fair to our kids. It's just not. And the only way to rectify it's by hiring a teacher. And at Summit Elementary, like I said before, the average teacher salary is around $75,000. So if you start looking at the financials of this plan, their plan's gonna raise about $500,000 in incremental tax revenue annually. But if you look at the data that we have, if you were to rezone this or continue to zone it as single-family school or rezone the 34 acres to single-family housing, I should say, it's gonna put approximately 103 homes on that site. And it's gonna generate about $580,000 in tax revenue. So what I'd ask you to consider is if you're willing to rezone it to overcrowd our schools and to give us approximately $80,000 less per year annually, what is that gonna mean in 10 years when it's $800,000 of lost revenue? Where are we gonna make that up? When we look at how many kids are going to attend the schools, because that's something that they like to show a data point on to say it's 14 to 16. Now I would say if you're an expert at something, you're not gonna give an approximate average. You're not gonna say it's 14 to 16. You're gonna have it dialed down to the decimal point. Anything less is a gamble, and it shows that you don't know. So I'm gonna show you data from a Rutgers University study, 2018. It's one of the largest scale and most respected studies. Data was compiled over multiple years. Rutgers University, July of 2018, in case you guys wanna cite it too, or look at it. I've also sent it to Alderman Kowalski and Alderman Rozek for their review. That data basically looked at school-aged children per unit. And it looked at per 100 units, how many school-aged children are typically in a unit. And what they found was that the number was astounding. Now, if you dial down the number, and I have the math here, it's gonna be well over 200 is the estimate. Now, what was cool about this study is they took analysis of it. It was a meta-analysis. But then they looked down and did some sub-analysis. And they looked down to average incomes. And then they looked at they called it low rise, medium rise, high rise. Now, the project that they're presenting is considered low rise. It's 1 to 3 stories. So they actually looked at the average income, and they looked at the amount of rise of apartments, 1 to 3. And if you look at that, the number almost reaches 300. 300 additional students to our overly crowded schools right now. Not capacity, but student-teacher ratio. And when you look at the numbers before, how I said that you're gonna lose approximately $80,000 in tax revenue if you rezone this a different way, what are you gonna do when you have to hire a teacher to balance those ratios out? $75,000 per teacher. So it takes their $500 net revenue, because who pays for those teachers? We do. Comes out of our coffers, right? Taxpayers do. So if you take that $500,000 and you add just one teacher, now it's worth $425 to us. If you add 2 teachers, it's worth $375. We can continue down. How many teachers do we need to add to balance our ratios? If you don't balance the ratios, housing values go down. They just do. When everyone wants to move into an apartment or to a home, they want to buy a home, they go on grade schools if they have kids. And they say, where do I want to live? So I just ask you, are you willing to move this project forward for the sake of losing money for tax revenue? How much, we don't know, but it's a gamble. In overcrowding our schools or increasing capacity, putting our student-teacher ratio into an even worse spot. Those are the 2 things I think we have to consider. There are a lot of gambles. We've seen all their data. I've shown you some of mine. I've sent it to you guys so you can review it if you need to, and I've sent screenshots of the select data that's very pertinent to this talk. We all can cherry pick data points. Mine were from 2018. They've shown a lot that were 20-some years old. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and move on to regular business. Next item is approval of meeting minutes from July 16th, 2019. We need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Get to it. We're not there yet.
Oh, yeah.
Next is comments and suggestions from citizens. Anybody that wants to bring up any other subject besides what we talked about at the public hearing is welcome to come up and speak.
Actually, the first thing I want to do is compliment all of you. It was a great festival week. It was honestly, to me, it was like the best festival week so far. I mean, I don't know how many people came to town, but it was way more than 5 years ago. I mean, it was crazy, wonderful. The statues, people couldn't get enough of themselves in pictures. They still can't get enough of themselves. Everybody's out there taking selfies. On that note, I would request that you move the witch, because I don't know if anybody's looked at it from the back side of the parking lot, but you gotta walk through past a smelly dumpster and the big cooker from the restaurant out there, and it really stinks, and you gotta walk, and that's what you see when you come from the backside where Gloriosos or whatever it's called. So that's unfortunate, because you might see the witch from the front, but you also see the witch from the backside, and it's not in a really attractive place. She deserves a better place. Okay. I think it's funny, but I really do. It was my favorite all-time movie in my whole life. So I think because of all the people in town, it would be really interesting to consider putting up 2 screens next year, next time we do it. Either 2 that face this way, and you have the viewing in opposite directions, because there's no way that anybody from this half of the back, from this middle to the back, could begin to even see the screen. It was impossible. So either put them opposite each other so you could have people facing this way, or create a second row and have a screen in the middle. More food trucks. The lines were half an hour to 45 minutes long to get barbecue, to get the only guy that wasn't selling any food was the little Asian guy, I'm not quite sure. But the 2 main trucks, I think it was Greek and barbecue, they were half an hour to 45 minutes to get something to eat there. Garbage needs to be emptied more often. There was way too much overflow of garbage there. Triathlon. Triathlon brings a lot of fun things here, but it's really hurtful to the farmers. I brought this up last year, the same week, same thing. Those farmers need that week to sell. I know that we did a farmer's market on Friday. It was great, but there are a lot of farmers that couldn't be there because of either the weight of their trucks or whatever. It was better than it was last year because we offered the Friday, and other vendors came that have never been here before, so that was nice. But I think it's really hard for farmers to not be able to, one of the choicest weeks of the whole year. And on that note, I think that we should consider limiting who comes to our farmer's market. There are way too many churches being there. There are way too medical, exercise vendors, large retail stores such as the Great Harvest, even Holler Apple Orchard from wherever it is down in Racine. In the beginning of the summer, we have way too much. Now we don't have Apple, the orchard guy, because he can do something different. But if it's supposed to be a farmer's market, then it can be jewelry that they're making, but it should be personal things that they're making. It shouldn't be storefronts who are just setting up a little shop in the farmer's market. It shouldn't be the churches are setting up markets. I don't care what kind of church it is. And I really think that, you know, the chiropractors and the physical therapists and everybody else, that's not a place for the farmer's market. That's my opinion. We need more benches. I brought this up last year. On 67, from where the War Memorial is, just past the houses, going to the bridge where everybody fishes, we have one swing there. That is the coolest sunset. It's awesome. It's as good as the one in Ephraim along the beach, and there are hundreds of people that are out there. Hundreds of people walk around Fowler and everybody's clamoring for that one swing set. One freaking swing set. It is not enough diameter for you to put a 10 by 10 cement pad up to put more swings, but you could certainly put probably another 6 or 8 benches there that people could sit on. The color of the fire trucks. I'm sorry, the new fire trucks are old school. When I was growing up, fire trucks were red. Yellow fire trucks are way more visible, and EMT vehicles, when they're bright neon yellow and you see them coming on the highway or you see them coming down the road. So I would ask you to go to the fire chief and ask him not to order any more red and black fire trucks. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to regular business. First item is the consent agenda. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
That we have licenses, a electrical utility easement, and the treasurer's report. Any questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Stray,
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski,
Aye.
Alderman Rozak,
Aye.
Alderman Shaw,
Aye.
Alderman Ellis, Alderman Spiegelberg,
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Okay, we move on to Plan Commission. First item is consider act on a resolution to amend the city's, actually, it's an ordinance, right? Or is that the second one? No, it's not. Consider act on a resolution to amend the city's comprehensive land use plan 2010-2030 for 34.45 acres at approximately 1600 Valley Road from business park to and suburban residential to high-density residential. So we need a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Are you going to talk about both things at once?
I certainly can, yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to clarify, this is not a resolution, this is an ordinance. The Plan Commission adopted a resolution to amend the land use plan, but the Common Council must act on an ordinance. It's an actual law, so it is ordinance, and that was my mistake. So there was a revised agenda out that says, consider act on the ordinance, and the ordinance is at your stations this evening. It was prepared, but it did not get in your packets.
And the second one is an ordinance as well.
Right,
Okay.
so they're both ordinances this evening, so the motion that is made should be to consider the ordinance to amend the land use plan. Now, we held a public hearing on this earlier, and this does come to you with a positive recommendation from the Plan Commission. I can certainly be available to answer any questions. If the land use plan is successful tonight, then the zoning ordinance can take action on that. The findings of any zoning change must be made, and they're in the report. I did not go through those, but for the minutes and for the record, they're in the staff reports. I put together a report that discussed a lot of the topics that were discussed this evening, earlier during my presentation, as well as some of the public comments. I'm also available to answer any questions potentially about the school districts. I felt that's not really pertinent much to the land use, but the thing that I want the council to hear is it is zoned single family, and single family is a use that does bring in more trips per day per unit, as well as more school children. It's just the facts that if it was developed with 103 single family homes, that would be much more school kids and burden on the district than the apartments as proposed. I'd be available to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. So we'll start discussion on this. Who wants to go first? I know somebody wants to go first. Lou?
I'll go first.
Thanks
I'd
for
like-
looking at me though, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Well, I figured you were going to go first.
I guess I'd like to start by thanking everybody for their comments. There's been a lot of discussion about it. That's part of our job. Our job is to listen, to evaluate, and to respond with the vote that we're looking to cast today. I would say that in our role to listen, we have heard your concerns associated with the project. We have heard the proposal from Mendel, and we've heard from staff. And we have lots and lots of statistics and paper and opinions, and that's part of our job to evaluate. What we are evaluating is beyond opinion. It is the fact of what this type of development will bring to our community, and how it could change our community. And I think everybody that's sitting here values the fabric of our community the way it exists today. This past weekend was an extraordinary weekend with all of the events and all of the life downtown, and all of the guests that we welcomed into our community from outside of Oconomowoc. And I was extremely proud about how that came together. Fact of the matter is, I don't know if an event like that would have come about the way it did 10 years ago, because our community was different 10 years ago. What we're looking to evaluate today is going to change what our community looks like 10 years from now. to the fact of the ratios for our schools, what our community looks like and what it values for quality of life. And single-family homeowners tend to be a little bit different than apartment renters in regards to what they look for. But the fact of the matter is, our community consists of all of those people, and all of those people are present in our daily lives. So, you know, what is the best use? Do we need more single-family dwellings? Because we're going to continue to grow. They're coming. Do we need more workforce housing? I think we do. Do we need more apartments in general? Statistics show that we do. You might not like it. I might not like it. I may love to see our community stay the way it is today. Fact of the matter is, though, our community is going to change. That is a big weight on our shoulder, and that's why we are here. The type of development matters. In my evaluation and my taking a look at what this developer is bringing to our consideration, their track record, I think they're a quality developer. I think the development is a quality development, and I think it adds to the fabric of our community. There are safety concerns associated with this project. The list of things that we need to consider, I mean, we could spend another week sitting here without recess and without pause. But the safety concerns associated with Valley Road are, I believe, real. And I'm really proud how this council has addressed other safety concerns associated with Highway P and the development that's gone on there. And I think safety is paramount in what we decide and how we help guide these developments forward. And I think that between council and staff and the developer, we can ensure that they are addressed appropriately. The traffic associated with this particular development will change that area. How it's addressed and to what extent it changes that area is yet to be seen in reality. It is our job to help associate that risk with the reality. And there are some comments that were made about what was originally promised with Pabst Farms and what could have been in Pabst Farms. And at one point, there was a discussion of an IKEA. To me, if you put an IKEA there, that's going to drive a lot more traffic than a 315 unit apartment complex, by far. But that was what was talked about, and that was what was kind of desired. This is a lesser impact to that community and that side of town. The referendum in the school, we aren't tasked with how the school board and the school district manages the schools. We are tasked with how the city develops, the quality of which the city continues to grow. And in due diligence, we have engaged with the school district and at their highest levels, and they don't have a problem with this particular development. You might agree with it, you might not agree with it, but those are the people that we need to rely on for our decisions. There is a legitimate feeling of not in my backyard. This could be a great development somewhere else, but not here. We got to take a look at a comprehensive snapshot of our city. Is this the right place for this type of development? It is right off of 94. It is adjacent to a state highway that was developed to handle the type of traffic associated with an IKEA and a large, robust retail presence. This is a much, again, much lower use for that type of traffic. But what goes on down the road from 67 is going to marry into it, right? Olympia is, has been referred to as the tenderloins of our city. It will develop. That will drive traffic. Are we going to deny that type of development because we don't want to see traffic and we don't want to see our community grow anymore? Do we stop it here? Do we stop it there? Or do we ensure that the development is appropriate for our community, represents the quality of our community that was reflective of this past weekend? I spent time with people in this audience and value that input a lot. With all of that, I am in favor of this development. I appreciate the fact that our Planning Commission and Alderman Zwart added verbiage to what has been proposed, that if we decide as council to deny this at any point in the process, that it would revert back to the zoning as it currently exists. I think that's important. It's an important safety feature to our community. So if it's zoned high density high, and this doesn't move forward for whatever reason, somebody can't come in behind that and put a 415 unit apartment complex in place where the 315 unit is currently being proposed. So I know it's a little long-winded, but again, it's a big topic. Everybody has shared their opinion, and I want people to know why I'm voting the way I'm voting.
Charlie.
That was very long-winded. Keep mine a little bit shorter, I'm sure. I, for one, don't like apartment complexes. I've told you guys that in the past. I have some concerns with this one, with the amount of rooftop there is, amount of parking spaces there are, the amount of concrete, the amount of walkways, things like that, the amount of hard surface. But I'm hoping that at some point, some of this could become something that can absorb water better, than the hard surface itself. I was originally opposed to this, but I am going to vote in favor of the zoning change because I think this is a really good use of this space. I do. And it was hard for me to make that change. I will tell you that because I was adamantly against it from the start. I have no interest in any kind of TIF here. I want to see it just built as it is.
Well, you thought Lou was long-winded. It was supposed to be a joke, but yeah, it just didn't, it fell flat, I'm sorry. All right, now we go. What time is it? But first, a little bit of housekeeping before I start my comments. Jason, do we need to do any, I know we got this letter for August 19th from Mr. Martin. Do any of the changes for the zoning need to be put, the little road connection, everything that was discussed at Planning Commission need to go in the land use plan change? Because right now, it looks like the way it's been motioned is just the land use plan change without any conditions on it.
Right, that's a great question. I would say no. Zoning ordinances and land use plan ordinances don't have those type of conditions, but there is a developer's agreement that they have to come back, and that has to come before the council, and that's why I stated that earlier, that there's other approvals that this board gives, and that's talking about the road improvements and everything, and I think that might be a more appropriate, facility, and maybe attorney can speak to that as well, but I don't think you've put the conditions. Now, maybe.
You're right, I just want to make sure if this does get voted in favor of tonight, that we've got the access road, the developer agreements and everything in there, and if that needs to be in this motion or the zoning motion, we need to make sure it's in there before it's voted on.
I would say that if you adopt and you approve this thing, you adopt the recommendations of the Plan Commission, then it would be covered. And the way it would be dealt with would be through a developer's agreement where not only would those conditions be placed in the developer's agreement, but there will be a requirement that they record restrictions in their condominium documents that incorporate those three. There are some other details that have to be dealt with, like, is the reliever road, well, first of all, where is it going?
Right.
Second of all, is it going to be private? Is it going to be public from the get-go? But it would certainly have to be built to city standards, and that would all be covered in the developer's agreement. You all have a kick at that.
Right.
So,
So the question is, does this need to be part of this motion to approve the comprehensive land use
No.
change?
No.
Can we add it
that's
to
just
the?
land use. When you get to the rezoning, that's
Okay.
where that will be.
Okay, very good. So that's clear. Now I guess to some of my other comments. I've taken a lot of notes on this project. I've met with the developer representatives on occasion. I went to the neighborhood meeting. I went to planning commission meeting, and then sat through a lot of the same presentations several times. You know, this is about land use, right? It's not really about the schools and everything else. And I struggle with some of the commentary from the developer too, because they kind of started that discussion, and then the folks brought it up. And so some of those things I think we do need to address and talk about tonight. I'm not gonna go through all these notes right away. But when you first look at the project, right, it looks good. And what I'm very disappointed about when I sat through the planning commission meeting is that there was very little deliberation, very few comments about the actual highest and best use for this land. And some of the questions revolved around the report we got from planning on this, which is, for instance, in 2C, there's a comment that retailers are demanding higher numbers of rooftops in close proximity of where they locate stores. Okay, that's a great point. We already have a land use plan, though, where there was an anticipation of a large mall and community center and community area being put in out there. Wasn't that considered then? Our land use plan is not that old. The current version is only 2010, so we're not dealing with a land use plan that's 30 or 40 years old. This is a relatively new plan. And when people purchase homes, wherever they purchase homes, whether it's in the Crossings, East Lake Village, or anywhere, they expect that the land use plan and the zoning surrounding them is going to remain relatively unchanged, that they're not going to have a significant change in housing structures, in development near them. And that's an expectation, and that's our promise to the community. And so I struggle. Look, I think the project looks kind of cool. I think it'd be kind of a cool place to have an apartment. I don't think that's the highest and best use of that place. And when we have a land use plan and we have zoning, that is really the city and all the residents' promise to the other residents that live there. And again, it's not just that not in your backyard. It's, I don't want this in your backyard either if your backyard was not meant to be that way. And that's the difference. That's where I kind of come down on the side of voting against this project. Again, this is a tough decision. I spent a lot of time, I've talked to a lot of people. I can tell you that nobody in my constituency said they were in favor of this, and that definitely weighs a huge part of this. Again, when I went to the Planning Commission meeting, I was very disappointed that there was very little commentary. There was very little discussion about highest and best use, and it was just kind of a kick the can, let the council make the decision. I expect our Planning Commission to have thorough discussions, especially about a project this large in our community. 1/20th of our city residents could live in this 34 acres. Think about that. So the Planning Commission recommended this with almost no discussion, no commentary. The rest of the city is 7,891 acres. This is 34 acres, and they're gonna have 700 to 800 people living in that spot. And this was sent on to us with very little comment, very little recommendation, very little discussion. That's disappointing. One of the things too I see happening is we're giving, this is not really a comment on the land use change, but we're giving developers and we're giving a lot of time for everyone to present it. And we're kind of, and maybe this is a procedural change we can talk about, hamstringing the people that actually live here. These people that pay their taxes, that send their kids to the schools, are almost being gavelled at 3.1 minutes, but a developer or whoever has an hour or 35 or 45 minutes. I think we need to try to create some consistency there. Not saying that all these folks want to speak for 35 or 45 minutes or an hour, but I also think the people that pay our taxes that elected us need to be heard. And I think we can be a little bit more flexible there. Oh, there we go. I've never been clapped for before, so that's excellent. Look, people buy homes in the areas and they invest their time, their money, their sweat equity. They want to raise their families there, and they expect these areas to remain how they were. And we're dropping into this area, and it's not just because I live near the area, high-density residential that was not planned, that was not part of the procedures. The other thing we did is in 2017, this was part of the planning, and I was here for that vote. On page, well, it's page 2 of the planning report. We had a very similar request in 2017. And the concerns that we voted down as a council were all the same concerns that were heard tonight. Infrastructure, how it's going to affect the schools, changes to the road infrastructure and everything. Those same concerns as what we voted down 2 years ago are the exact same concerns we're hearing now. And I still don't think those concerns have been met. Look, Valley Road's an issue, and I don't buy the road study. I asked for a comprehensive road study. What we got was 125 exits during peak morning hours with 650 parked cars and 800 residents living there. That's not realistic numbers. And maybe it's because of the bad data. Maybe it's because of poor judging of the community. But one of the folks that came up here and spoke, I think his name was, he's not here, I wanted to give him a shout out, Greg Voss. He said, there's a lot of data points, but Oconomowoc unique. And what makes Oconomowoc unique is the flavor that's always been here. And a lot of that is single-family residential. The tax base is not going to change significantly, whether it's single-family or it's these apartments. I don't think that that's a concern for the land use. You know, city services do increase sometimes with apartments. You're talking about fire, police. Park use with 800 residents is a lot more than with maybe 100 houses or 90 houses or 80 houses. And a lot of the developers anyway in single family they put in the road, they put in the infrastructure. And yeah, we do repairs on the roads eventually, but that's way down the road. And that's a long ways away. And I would deign to think about what those roads look like compared to what those apartments will look like in 40 years. That's something to be considered. Ultimately, this is a land use decision at this point. It's not just at the zoning level right now. And it's not about all the other stuff, but what is our best use? We're almost or close to or above or whatever, however we shade those numbers. We're at 60-40 right now, give or take a few percentage points. 60% single family, 40% multifamily. And I personally think that that's an okay number to be at. I don't think we need to keep pushing that envelope, and I don't think we need more apartments in the city right now. A couple last little points from the presentation. Certain things can turn people off in a community when you have to kind of know your audience. I spoke to Mr. Martin on several occasions, but one of the things he said tonight was there's an emotional element here. There is an emotional element. This is where we live. So it's hard to separate that from that decision, right? But we do have to separate. We have to separate the other emotions of, wow, that looks really cool, right? This would be really neat here. Separate out that emotion as well, not just the in my backyard emotion or the protecting my kids in the rows emotions. So separate those things out too and consider what the whole impact will be. Not just this looks cool and these guys are good developers. I think they'd have a great project. I think it'd be developed well. But I don't think it's the right spot. We've got a lot of other areas in the city. This does not have to be given as of right. The comprehensive land use change and the zoning change are our options to give. We don't have to do that tonight. What else? I'm going to leave it for now. We pay a lot of our infrastructure costs too. We pay for our garbage pickup too. A lot of people don't know that, but it's on our tax bills, a separate item, so we pay for that too. Look, there's a lot of other, I've got a ton of points here. I don't want to go through them all and beat them all to death. A lot of people have been here for a long time listening to this, but I have not heard tonight from Planning Commission or from anyone real reasons to change the comprehensive land use plan out there right now. And I'm going to vote against this project as it stands right now.
I'm also opposed to the land use change at this point. I'm just not willing to give this property up yet. I believe that single-family homes are still the highest and best use for that piece of land. And actually, depending on how many properties we could put on that, the tax base could be higher, putting in single-family homes, whatever volume, and the property tax revenue almost twice the amount that we'd get from this apartment complex. We have residents in the neighborhood around it, many who are here tonight, thank you for your comments, bought their properties understanding that single-family homes would be developed in that area and not a high-density apartment complex. In our steering committee surveys, participants readily said that we need more affordable workforce housing. I don't believe this project answers that need. I talked to a woman who's a nurse at Oconomowoc Hospital. She and her family live in Watertown with their 3 kids. They would gladly want to live in a subdivision in this area if there were affordable homes in that area. So I could foresee maybe a subdivision of homes with a slightly lower price point than in the surrounding subdivisions. Some of the statistics tonight were saying that home sales are on the decline. However, young families are still buying homes at a very large rate. Real estate companies can't keep their inventories in the books. Interest rates are still low. People want to be close to work. All of this, again, goes back to the steering committee survey that we did. I think right now that we have enough availability of apartments, and any large complex in the city has availability. That doesn't even take into account that Vanguard has not even stuck a shovel in the ground yet. So I guess I would like to see us pass for now on changing the land use plan. Let's see how the Vanguard development plays out, the impact it has, consider other possibilities to develop the land on Valley Road. And in the end, my main points are this. I don't believe that this is the highest and best use for the city, for this property, number one. And number two, I want to listen to our citizens who are telling us two main things. The group tonight, they don't want this high-density property for many reasons cited. And then the survey group that wants more affordable housing and houses so they can live and work and spend their money in the Oconomowoc area.
Kevin?
Wow. I came in here tonight after reading and doing my own research. The Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago had an article that talked about the trend of housing and what was happening on the East Coast and on the West Coast. Understanding that the Midwest is usually at least 20 years behind both East and the West Coast, I kind of look at that and I say to myself, okay, this is eventually going to happen. This is eventually going to get here. Do we prepare for it? Or do we kind of put our heads in the sand and say, it's not going to happen, not in my backyard? I've noticed a couple of things about Oconomowoc. I've lived here 15 years. We are changing. We are a very big ship, and it's a very a very slow change, but we are changing. The question here that needs to be asked and answered is, are we willing to go with that change? I don't know the answer to that. I can only speak for the information that I have. Terry? Bill? I'm so bad with names. I wanna thank you for that Rutgers University survey. I'm a graduate of Rutgers University, so that hit me in my heart. I do see a change. I noticed also that Oconomowoc is growing at a 3.8, is it?
3.8 or 3.9.
3.8, 3.9. How are we going to house all those people? How's that going to happen? Now, granted, Karen, you make a good point. We got a lot of projects going on right now. Who is beeping? I can wait. I'd really like to know who's beeping. Thank you so very much. We are growing, and the bottom line here is this is a conversation that we're going to be having for a very long time. I am, at this point in time, in favor of this project. And the reason why I'm in favor with it is because of the fact that we have to somehow or another, we want to have big name stores. come to Oconomowoc in the Paps Farms area. I remember 15 years ago, people wanted big name places to come here and be in the Paps Farms area. The problem that exists then, which now still exists today, is the fact that our population is not big enough. We will never be able to attract big name stores because we don't have the population for it, period. The other problem that I'm having, and that's why I said wow, is the fact that we have a lot of other buildings, a lot of other condos that are going up right now. And we are literally right in the middle of completing some of them and getting very close to completing some others. So the question I have is, what impact is that going to have on Oconomowoc as a whole? And is that going to be enough for the foreseeable future? I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is that the impact, I like the project as it is, but I do have one question. And one gentleman had brought that up. Mike? Mike still here? Did he leave? Oh, okay. Yeah, Mike Strong. If we were to reconfigure it and move it, because Valley Road is a very small, it's very shallow, it's very, very narrow road. If we were to do that, what type of an impact would that have? Did you look into that study? Yes.
Just come up to the mic.
I'm not sure if you mean impact based on traffic impacts of flipping it. If that's what you mean, we studied all those intersections. So the orientation of the site wouldn't have any impact on the traffic impacts. So if it runs north-south, runs east-west, won't impact the traffic.
So you can kind of shift it, if you could, to north, so east-west instead of north and south, if it were so desired.
I'd have to ask the property owner to purchase a different tract of land, and I think then the question would become, what do you do with the business park zoning that currently runs on the north side of the site? My understanding was that was put on the north side of the site because it is a more intensive use than the multifamily. So if you move the multifamily up, what happens to the business park, I think?
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Because that would generate traffic on the south end.
Right, okay. I didn't know the answer, so I figured I would ask. So, in conclusion, I am in favor of this project because I believe that it's going to bring Oconomowoc some favorable results. I'm not looking at it for today. I'm looking at those results 10 and 20 years down the road when the East Coast and the West Coast we catch up with. That's the bottom line.
Kevin? Eric, you want to go?
I'll have a go. All right, first I'd like to talk about, there was a prior development that came through here in 2017. I'm not sure how many units that was, but I know they wanted high density.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
And it was tied to something else going on in our community, wasn't it? Rogers was going to expand, and it was kind of based on the fact that Rogers was going to come here and do something big. So it was tied to that. This is a standalone project that they've done a lot of research on. From what I understand, they're a very quality organization with quality maintenance. They own their own properties, so it's not going to get dilapidated over time. It's going to stay a quality place. I like the sense of community that they're trying to promote by having gathering areas. I think that'll be good for empty nesters or millennials to have a community-type place rather than a place where you walk in and into a hallway and go into your apartment. It's going to be more of a front entrance type of a place, and they have a lot of, what they said is they promote a lot of activities for the people that live there, which is good. Might be a place I want to be once my child leaves in about 1.5 years, and I don't want a 4-bedroom house for myself. So It's something that I would probably appreciate, and I'm sure other people would as well. I believe because they're gonna maintain all of their parking lots and landscaping, there'll be less impacts to your day-to-day maintenance and also reconstruct. They're gonna, from what they tell us, they take care of their properties, and they're not gonna let it get to that kind of state where the roads are in poor shape. I think the demand is there. They wouldn't be here presenting in front of us. I think this organization, I don't believe, is gonna go out and build a project like this on the chance that maybe people will come. I think the facts are there, and they very much want to be here. And I think you should never pass, I don't believe, on a quality product. I think you're always happy with quality rather than having something of lesser quality. And if you pass on this, I think down the road you'll wish you wouldn't have. So I'm going to be in favor of this.
You want to say something, Tom, or?
Who, me?
Yeah, well, you're the one who haven't talked yet.
Oh, darn it. Well, okay. I'll wake everybody up anyway. You know, I kind of like it when people come in and like all you people up there talking, and I write a lot of notes, and there's I learn a lot of things. Well, and I also get a kick out of some people that don't know what aldermanic area they're in, and someone said that he grew up in Oconomowoc, but he was in the town of Summit. Oh, he left. So, anyway. You know, why didn't the development come in earlier out of Pabst Farms? Well, from what I understand from a lot of people, that it was just wasn't cost effective because it was just too much for the property. And that's true. Getting better. I mean, I like those guys out there. I like the project. One of the worst nightmares, and I've talked to several police departments, is apartments. That's the number one menace is apartments. Even our chief was telling me that a while ago, because of it's tough to maintain the integrity of the apartments. And now this one probably won't have any problems because it's going to cost a couple of dollars to rent the places. As far as the stores are concerned, they're antiques. You won't see no stores anymore. I'm not an Amazon guy, but you know, you've got all this stuff going around here, and you know, so we got a Noodles and Company out there now. Instead of a Chick-fil-A, which we should have got down the street, that'll bring people. And don't forget, I've had a lap or two around the pool in the restaurant business. And yes, it takes people to come in and to strive with these things, but I don't know that this project will bring them. I hope they do. But as far as the schools are concerned, you know, when that Summit Elementary was built, within 1 year it was overcrowded. And granted, we see some data, we don't know if it's right or wrong that they're getting there. But, you know, when they were talking about 14 or 16 people in their apartments, well, it may not be 100, but I know it's going to be more than 14 or 16. And the school district forgot about the 350 things that Newman's building down the road. That place is going to be swamped. We have to look at, yes, it's not our responsibility to look with the school district, but you know, when it comes down and when those people open up their tax bill, I call it a Christmas card, when you get it about the second week of December, first thing they yell at us, the taxes went up, and they blame us. So, you know, we have to look out at another end of it. So maybe the brain thrust over there isn't quite hitting it all up. But other than that, I listen to lots of people, and lots of people that I've talked to call me, and I write down. I have a day timer. People call me all day and night about different issues. Most people that I've talked to, if they've called me, don't necessarily like this project out there. So I usually go with my constituents, but I'm not, and as far as that 60-40 rule, you know, Jason has changed that thing about 6 times in the last 2 months. Went from 31% to whatever, and we haven't done anything. I was looking at a thing that I got the other day, last year, there were 85 new single homes here in Oconomowoc, 140 apartments and 30 condos. So that doesn't sway, maybe it's 60-40 the other way. But, and I'd like, you know, and everybody knows that I'm not a real big apartment guy, but I also want to keep into that 60-40 rule, and I know we're over it. And there's got to be some way that we can justify how these numbers come on, you know? So, thanks.
Okay, Matt?
In a lot of comments, I'm not going to go into real depth into all the comments, but it sounds like people have kind of made up their minds. But when I look at the map in front of me, what I see is a development right now that I don't think fits the area. It doesn't fit the character of Oconomowoc, and you will drop, even if they put in this other road through here somewhere towards the top left of your screen, the traffic's gonna flow where they wanna go. And if they're gonna be commuters and they're gonna go to work somewhere else, they're gonna go up to go back out. They're gonna go down Valley Road. This is another development. I mean, it's funny, when you see these plans like this, Pabst Farms condos, those are the duplexes by Kingsway that's called the Crossings. I've heard from probably half a dozen people in there that have just bought brand new condos that are worth $400,000 a piece. And you're gonna have all these residents dropping right out on Valley, right on the corner of Gold Medal Drive. I don't believe the traffic study. I know that's a county road. Somebody said something about why don't we fix it? It's a county road, we can't do anything about it. But what we can do when we're deciding on the land use plan change is say, because of the way the road is, this is not the best spot for it. We have a 6-lane highway that's called Summit Avenue 67 now. You've got stuff going in by Olympia, there's other development, there's things that are potentially going on there. That's the right place for it. When you have other condominium buildings, you have more mixed use stuff going on the other side of 67 with direct arterial roads that can go right into 67 and dump people back onto the interstate if that's what they're really doing. That's the right spot, that's the better fit. This isn't the right fit. And I thought I made a pretty good argument before, obviously it fell flat, that these land use plans that we come up with, that we pay people $50,000 to put together, right, and that we vote on, this is part of our commitment to the community. It's an ordinance that we passed to adopt the land use plan. And what we're saying to people is if you buy a house here, or you buy a $400,000 condominium on Gold Medal Drive, that across from you is gonna be similar type stuff. It's not gonna be a zoo, right? It's not gonna be a golf course. It's not gonna be high density residential. Those are promises we make to those folks, and when we break that promise by changing the land use plan and ultimately changing the zoning, we're breaking our promise to our residents.
Eric?
Yeah, I apologize, I didn't address your land use and why I feel this is a good use for that property. If you were to zoom out, you'd notice that you have condos to the south, there's a park to the north, school to the east, and commercial or mixed use to the west. This is I believe if you were gonna have apartments in Pabst Farms, this would be an excellent spot for it. I'm not saying it's gonna pass or not, but I think it's the best place because you don't have single-family homes right next to it. There's a sea of single-family homes out there right now to the east. And this is very close to the main arterial road, which is 67, which actually has more capacity if need be for the future. I believe they could expand it to 8 lanes if it was necessary. But right now, they just have it striped for 6. Also, when I moved here, I had houses across the street from me, and they changed the zoning to do some improvements and for the downtown to grow. I miss my neighbors dearly, but they're all gone, and now I have new ones across the street, and I'm happy with the product that's across from me right now. So sometimes things have to change. Sometimes change is tough, but I think this is the best thing for our community in general. Maybe not for people who live out there, the perceived benefit isn't there. But I think once it's in there, I think they'll become accustomed to it, and it won't be a detriment to them, either financially, for their property values. I think it will probably generate about the same amount of traffic as single-family homes who who would tend to drive to the Y on a number of occasions. I think a lot of that traffic is generated by the school and the YMCA, and I think single-family homes would probably generate just as much traffic if we're concerned about that.
This will be my last. So as a steward of the city and what we're looking at now, I don't think zoning is a promise. It is a defined guideline for what we perceive to be appropriate for our city as it grows. But that changes, to Derek's point. And it's our job to make sure that as it changes, it's comprehensive and it plays to the benefit of the community. Karen, for best use there, you know, is that piece of property best served for workforce housing? Would the community that is out there right now prefer to see apartments in the $800 a month range or higher end that represents a higher end community element in the Past Farms area?
Talking about $800 apartment.
Well, workforce housing, right? So I get it. We do need workforce housing, more reasonably priced housing in our community to support the growth. Where that goes is important. Where this goes, where these types of projects go, is important. Do I think that if this passes or fails, that you won't see something like this come up in Olympia? It'll come up in Olympia. Single family will come up in Olympia. Retail will come up in Olympia. There is going to be more, not either or. It's going to be a both and it is not going to be what we are today to what we vote on today. It's a couple years of construction and a few years of absorption. So what does this community look like in 5 years? We have in front of us a 2050 comprehensive plan. I mean, our job is to look out and to do what's right tomorrow while maintaining our quality of life today. I think this project does that, and I'm not taking away your points and your comments are valid, and so are Matt's, and so are everybody else's out here. But what it looks like tomorrow and how this plays to that, I'm still for it. And I thought about writing down a comment, a statement prior to coming here. And I'm like, I don't know. I could hear something today that would have changed my vote. I haven't. I haven't heard something compelling enough that says this isn't the best use and it doesn't support the change in the zoning and our guideline for how our community looks. So I just want to touch on those points again because as a steward of what this city looks like, I'm still in favor of it.
Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, and I appreciate your comments too, but I haven't heard anything compelling enough tonight to change my vote as well. And I want to be clear that this is not against the Mandel Group. This project is fabulous. I just don't think that this is the best use for it in this piece of land. I'm not willing to vote to give up this beautiful piece of land, and I'm not anti-growth either. You guys know that. I'm not anti-growth. I just don't think that this is a good fit for this project in this beautiful piece of land that we should keep zoned single-family homes.
Just
One more comment?
Yeah, Jason, can you come up? I just have a few quick questions for you. How do you define pocket zoning? Is there anything wrong with pocket zoning, you know, grabbing a piece and rezoning it even though the other pieces around it are completely different?
I think you're referring to like spot zoning?
Or spot zoning, I'm sorry, yeah,
a
that's
term
what I
that
meant. Yeah,
that planners
that's-
use.
I'm sorry, that's a term of art for you, not for me.
Spot zoning does occur in communities. I mean, we have examples all throughout this community. I don't know if I would consider this spot zoning because it's quite a large parcel. let me go back to some of the other,
There's a good one.
here's our zoning map, and, you know, it's a considerable amount of size. There's other areas that are just to the north, along that water feature there, Aunt Polly's Wash Tub, there's a little bit of zoning that is multifamily.
So what are we gonna do with the little, to the right of the circle, upper right of the circle? What are we gonna do with that little piece? Is that getting rezoned as well?
Which,
Yep, right, yeah, right there, upper, no. Go to your,
Right there.
yeah, that piece. What are we doing
yes,
with it?
that's part of this application. Yeah,
And-
the circle is just a general location.
And we're changing the business light industrial here on the top, but we're gonna leave in business light industrial for the left-hand piece, right? It's hard for me to do without the laser pointer. Yeah, that piece, that's staying business light industrial, right?
Correct, yep,
And then below it, it's staying commercial, right?
right,
And then to the rest of it, it's gonna be this high-density residential, right?
right. And there will
right-
be a little bit in here, a little L-shaped piece left over, a remnant piece,
We're
that would have
gonna
to be
fix
cleaned up
that.
in the future with Plan Commission did talk about that remnant piece, and the consensus was, well, that's not part of this application, so we will, as time goes by, we'll have to determine what's the best use for that little piece there.
As far as this parcel goes in the city, based on my just driving around and my understanding of what we've done in the past, this to me seems like it will be the most intense use of 34 acres in the city as a whole. Would you agree with that? Other than maybe the downtown little section here, I mean, this is gonna be the most intense use of a chunk of land in the city, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, the downtown is obviously, the density down here is off the chart compared to this.
Right.
You know,
But-
but this is
but-
comparable to maybe the Stu Wangard up on the north. I mean, that Stu Wangard is 374 units and about considerable, about the same amount of land. So I would say it's comparable to that.
Same amount of land?
I'm,
I mean, we're looking at 26, and they said in the planning commission meeting another 2 additional potential garages, so 28 buildings on
maybe.
34 acres.
maybe it's a little bit more land. I think that one's around 7 units per acre. This is coming in at 9, maybe.
Right. So to answer my question, it is gonna be the most intensive 34 acres in the city other than downtown. Would you agree with that?
For residential purposes?
Yeah.
Yes.
In an area that was not originally designed for that and originally not planned for that, correct?
Well, Pep's Farms is a mixed-use area, and when I was first told, looking at that when I first started here, that was an area that was zoned single-family, but they kind of always knew that there'd be some multifamily component with the Pep's Farms.
Well, yeah, look, I get it, and I'm not trying to have an argument with you on that, and I've heard other people say that, but it wasn't ever in the plan. I mean, people may have said, well, that'd be great to have apartments out there someday, but it was never part of the plan. I mean, look,
Yeah, right.
look, the developers out there have promised the folks out there a lot over the years, and not a lot has been delivered. And to me, this is another one of those undelivered promises. And I'm against it. I don't know if I'm gonna change anybody else's mind here, but one of the last things you said in the report was that we've addressed all of the previous issues in this presentation that came up in 2017, and I don't know that we really have. The 2017 request was denied for all the same reasons we're talking about tonight. And the difference is we have a developer that did a good presentation, they have a nice project, I'm not denying them that.
Right, it wasn't actually denied. I was very specific in the report. I never used the word denied. The 2017 was just removed from the request, and it was taken out. And they changed the business park, but they said, we'll keep the SR zoning the way it is.
I don't remember if that happened in a closed session.
No vote
or how that
actually happened
Right,
on
but there
the
was a
denial.
proposal, though.
But there was a proposal, and it just wasn't adequate enough. There wasn't enough detail about the number of units. It was a moving target. I checked all the minutes. I read through that. It was never officially denied. It was just not acted on. They pulled it out because they said, you know what, guys, go back, do some more research, and come back, and it never happened.
Well, that's just kind of a question of semantics. One point to Derek, though. So the downtown overlay was different, right? So these developments that all happened down here were part of the plan. In fact, I think when we all got on council, one of the things we did was bring those unit heights down. Originally, it was 70 to 70, I think 70 feet everywhere, and we brought in those
Certain
step
areas.
backs and stuff.
Certain areas, yeah.
Yeah, certain areas. And that area across over here was at one point zoned for the 70-foot, I believe, in the downtown overlay, even before, because those developers
Moved here
had
in
another.
1998 though, man.
That could have been. Oh, well, yeah, that, I mean, back
So
when
when
you
I moved here,
We're not gonna debate across each other.
Right, yeah, you're probably right, but I don't know when that occurred, but there was a downtown overlay allowing for some of that. Which is different here, which is we're going beyond what's been allowed, so I think I've voiced all my concerns that I can. I hope that when we put in this road, that we're gonna make some smart decisions, and try to alleviate Valley Road problems, because it's going to be a problem. I don't care what the road study said, it's not accurate. Valley Road is going to be a problem. It's going to continue to be a problem as Newman develops and as this development gets put in.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Nay.
Alderman Zwart.
aye.
Can the clerk-
Without
As a point
objection.
of order, can the clerk please tell me what the vote count was again?
4-3.
5 in favor and
No.
2,
4.
4. I'm sorry.
Stray was against.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Tom, was that a yay or nay?
That was a nay.
That was-
Okay, I
I'm
couldn't
sorry,
tell.
I thought you
Yeah.
said
Okay.
yay.
Four.
Got
That's
it
why
out
I-
really
that's why I
quick.
asked that.
4-3.
Thank you, 4-3.
Without objection, we waive the second reading. Ordinance is in effect.
I would really like to hear from one alderman that is not here. You don't think it would have?
I'd change it.
If it was 4-4, he'd vote in favor
Vote in
of it.
favor of it
Break the
anyways.
tie.
Okay.
Next item is consider act on an ordinance to rezone approximately 34.45 acres at 1600 Valley Road to residential multifamily high. We need a motion to approve the ordinance.
So moved.
Second,
This is, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that everybody knows this is conditioned on the project at hand.
Basically, we should probably say condition on what was approved at Plan Commission.
Correct.
And that's your motion, and that's your second.
Yes.
So what was approved at Plan Commission is it's for this, this development only. The road goes through, and what was there a third one?
A maximum of 315
Maximum of
units.
315 units.
Well, there's more. There was a developers that they would agree to a developers
That's
agreement,
something,
that
yeah.
there would be
Yeah.
covenants
Yes.
entered
That's how we would
into
implement
to
those.
confirm those changes.
Yes.
And I don't know, the one part of that, if I may, Mayor,
Yeah.
I don't know that connecting to Old Schoolhouse Road is the best idea either. I know that's how they've got it in the letter. I just think we should make it clear that there should be some connection outside of Valley Road to whether it's Old School or Conomowoc Parkway, whatever makes the most sense.
I believe that the Plan Commission, the sentiment there was there would need to be a separate connection as designed and directed by staff and ultimately approved by this common council. And that I have heard from the developer that they would put it anywhere you want it.
Okay, I think that allays my concerns then. Thank you.
True? Is that right?
Ian, yep.
Okay.
Fire department approval too.
Fire department approval too.
That's
I
the
was
big
gonna
one.
say that, because the fire department's gonna require 2 access points.
So there won't be any building permits issued till that's done.
Okay, that satisfies my concern then.
I think staff would prefer the Old Schoolhouse Road connection, because going to Oconomowoc Parkway, you have to cross the Lake Country Trail again, and there's also an easement in there for the electrical lines. It'd be very challenging. There's already one connection through Old Schoolhouse Road, and I don't believe they're gonna give up a secondary access for a roadway. I mean, it's something we can look into, but I just don't know of the benefit of that. I think keeping that pathway clear with bikers, joggers, and walkers, the less amount of traffic, or at least the less amount of access points is the better solution there.
Go ahead, Derek.
You also might limit the development to the north of that road. If you bisected that piece, then you'd come up with 2 separate chunks, whereas it could be one development
Yeah.
if it went straight out to Schoolhouse Road. Do you understand where I'm coming from on that?
Yeah, I think so. I
If
guess
you-
my
if
concern
you-
is if you put them
If
on
you brought
school.
that road up, brought it out and then went north, you would then basically say you're making two parcels out of that piece.
Well, that's true. You have a large detention pond there anyway. I guess my concern is with the Valley Road issue, if you drop them out on Schoolhouse Road, you're just gonna create more congestion at that other intersection, whereas Economock Parkway is it's a boulevard, 4-lane boulevard. That's your best feeder into 67. So I think that alleviates more of the concern, because, look, if people have to turn out here and then go left or right again, they're just gonna go back down to Valley Road. They're gonna take the easiest way to get out. But if they can get on the Parkway and go right to the lights and go straight, that's where you're gonna wanna flow the traffic if at all possible. I'm not gonna second guess how they want to do all that necessarily, other than I think that, and I'm just throwing it out there. All right.
Both roads are 4-lane. The Parkway and Valley Road at that point are 4-lane.
Old Schoolhouse Road's not 4 lanes.
No, not Old Schoolhouse Road, but once you hit Valley Road, at that point, it's 4 lanes.
Well, that's true, but I guess
And-
you're congested there with
Yeah.
Fleet Farm and everything. I'm trying to alleviate the congestion to Economock Parkway, which is where it should go, which is what it was designed for, right? All the way through.
And that'll be decided at, whenever they
Yeah,
come up with the funds.
that's fine.
So we have a motion and a second on the zoning ordinance. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Nay.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Without objection, we'll waive the second reading. Ordinance is in effect. Next item, consider act on extraterritorial certified survey map for lot line combination at North 60, West 38, 469 Blackhawk Drive in the town of Economock. We need a motion to act on this extraterritorial certified survey map.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Jason?
Thank you. We have a land division, certified survey map in the town of Oconomowoc. It's about a half mile from our boundaries. The external boundaries of this property are remaining the same. All this certified survey map is doing is combining two lot numbers into one property. This was a requirement of Waukesha County. The Plan Commission did recommend approval. We did not perform a full detailed technical review since it is being reviewed by Waukesha County and the town of Oconomowoc as well. There was a signature error on the one. Chris Dainert's secretary's name was not listed, but the applicant was made aware of that, and the original does have her full name printed out in the signature block. I have no concerns with this. CSM, it's just a requirement that we review all these within a 3-mile radius of our city's boundaries. I recommend approval of this.
All right, thanks,
CSM.
Jason. Questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Call the roll.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers. I'm sorry, Alderman Rozak. Sorry.
Aye.
Kind of look like him.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to new business. First item is consider act on German Christmas market request to host Oktoberfest at Village Green on September 27th and 28th, 2019. We need a motion to approve the request.
So
I make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
I can report on that.
Go ahead.
This is a request by the German Christmas Market to host Oktoberfest. In the last week in September, the Park and Rec Board reviewed this matter and passed it on to the council with a positive recommendation. German Christmas Market did check with DOBA, who is in charge of our beer garden events in the downtown, and they are supportive of this additional event. If you recall, when the beer garden concepts were first discussed in the city, it went through the Park and Rec Board and to the council, and so we bringing this back forward through that same process. So it's coming to you with a positive recommendation. The details are laid out in the memo, and Sharon Mankey from the German Christmas Market is here if you would have any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead.
No, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. All of these events that take place on the Village Green do affect the local shop owners that are around there, specifically Schulte Plumbing and Heating, that needs access to their building 24 hours. So let's make sure that we accommodate that they have access to their building and the ability to be able to turn trucks around at the end of that parking lot.
Yeah, I think we've been working with
We've
them on the
been
on
much
the
better
parking,
at it,
yeah.
yes.
I know they had issues with the, actually during the German Christmas market, but not so much during the.
Right.
And I was down there on Sunday for the, some of the beer garden, and, there's a lot of activity in that corner, especially with that new business there that rents out the paddle boards and stuff, so there's a lot of things going on in that area.
It's just a reminder.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lou.
I'm in support of this. It's nice to see that kind of activity at the Village Green. Dova's done a nice job of launching our beer garden, having the German Christmas market participate in that is great. I'd just hate to see beer gardens at the Village Green every weekend during the summer. It's kind of a special event. It hopes to draw. So again, I'm in favor of it. I just would caution an overabundance of beer gardens at the Green.
So it says the suggested motion would be just for this year, 2019? Is this something that would come back before us every year unless?
They want to have it again next year.
there is, okay.
It's just the first year they've had it, so.
Yep.
How we've handled the other events, actually, the first year of the beer garden, there was a report back to the committee of the whole, and it was successful, and so now that continues on without council approval each and every year. I would envision something similar here.
Different group.
Yeah, this is a different group bringing it forward.
Sounds good.
They will need to come and apply for their picnic liquor license for the event, so that the council will see that each year if it continues.
Yep, sounds good.
This is in addition to the 3
Yes.
beer gardens, so I guess it's about once a month, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah. This will just be the German Christmas market putting it on instead of Doba. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Motion's carried.
Next item is consider act on street program policy procedures. We need, you want to talk about it first, or?
I certainly can. The council has been reviewing the street program policy and procedures. We've had a number of meetings on that. This is the finalized policy that the committee of the whole recommended during our last meeting. Essentially, this policy and procedure is talking about our process for design and construction, the procurement of our engineering services, how we evaluate those services for recommendation, and our change order process and contract process and project reporting.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the new street program policy and procedures. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Comments? Comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a big deal. I wish people would have stuck around for this one. This is, this was a lot of work, and it corrects, I think, functional and institutional problems we had with our street bidding program for probably over a decade. And I think we'll save the city money in the long run. I think we're gonna get a better product with this process change and with the switching of design and construction management services to different firms, and keeping our budgets in check. Having our professional service providers sign contracts, not to exceed. Everything in this policy is exactly what we've been working on for the last year or so. And it's probably a bigger deal than the apartment vote, but nobody probably knows. I mean, this is, I, in my opinion, overspent by millions of dollars.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I agree with most of what's in this new policy and procedure, but I am going to be voting against it. And the reason I am voting against it is because I don't like the part where if you win the design phase, you cannot vote for or you can't bid on the construction management part of it. That's the part that bothers me. We try to get as many bids as we can, and here we're eliminating a company from being able to bid just because they got the design part. So that's why I will be voting against it.
Any other comments? Derek?
Yeah, I agree with all Matt's comments, and I'd just like to thank everybody for being part of this because I think it's an important thing that we did. Thanks.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion, go ahead.
Sorry, I would agree, and I want to concur, and I want to also express that it wasn't easy going through this process. It took a lot of time, and there was a lot of hard decisions made in some people's eyes, and I think we ended up with a much better process for the community and for future councils to participate in.
Go ahead.
And I also agree, and I want to thank Derek and Matt for taking the lead on this. When I first came on council, my concern was the way things were being done, but I didn't know how to address it, and I really relied on those that had been here to step forth and help with this process. And I want to thank you both for stepping out there and saying, Houston, we got a problem here, we need to fix it. So I do really appreciate that.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. You want to call the roll?
Alderman Straight.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Nay.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Motion's carried.
Staff reports.
Yes, just two quick things. On your desk tonight is the comprehensive plan draft. We have a steering committee that will be held on August 27th at 6 p.m. So enjoy perusing the document, and we can talk more about it at the steering committee. It's quite comprehensive. Second, I just want to thank the community and all of the organizations and all of the employees and staff throughout the city. It takes a lot of people to pull together the festival week, and I think it was a huge success, and it was a wonderful week that showcased our community. So I want to thank everyone throughout the community, our organizations, and all staff that was involved.
Good. Reports and comments from Alderman? Charlie?
Yeah, I do have one. I just want to let everybody know that I will not be running for reelection come April time. I wanted the constituents in District 4 to know that in plenty of time, so anybody who's thinking about running should take the time to get the papers, get the signatures, and get your name on the ballot.
Kevin?
Yeah, I wanted to, this is kind of personal and everything, but that's okay. I wanted to go ahead and thank Stan for allowing me to play with his band. I wanted it to be,
He's good.
you guys missed it. You should have been there. I think it would have been a really good time for all of us. It would have been a great time to be with the community and have fun with the community, because this stuff right here is hard. And sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. And I got the opportunity to spend some time doing something that I've done for decades. And I really do thank you, Stan. It meant a lot to me. It really did.
Good. Any other comments? Mr. Stray?
I want to thank all the people that stomped my flowers and pulled the flowers out and took my ropes down over. I've been working hard at the funeral home to do this thing. And, you know, I had it roped off, they tore them all down. And then the insult to injury was that maybe when I saw that stuff the next day, you know, I got mad for about 30 seconds because that's not my normal thing. But I thought there was an incident that happened that maybe the guy, maybe the Wicked Witch of the East scared him because there was a load of crap in underwears right underneath the colored City of Oconomowoc banner. I got pictures. I'm not proud of them, but I'm thinking about, you know, taking some of it and take it out to my friend that's he can probably get the DNA, maybe we can run the guy down or something, but but anyway, it's not, you know, the guys over there at the funeral home too, they were just saying, we got 50 stalls, maybe from now on we'll just block them off.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a small thing, but, you know, it was one of those things, but I enjoyed myself watching that stuff.
I just want to thank everybody involved with making last week a success, from the people who work for the city, to the volunteers, to the contractors who got the pavement laid so it wasn't a mess over there. It was just fantastic how it all came together, and I know it wasn't an easy thing to coordinate, so everybody, thank you very much for making that successful. And I get a bird's eye view of those statues from my office, and all day long, and you know, people taking pictures, stopping by, it's really been kind of a cool thing to watch. I can't believe how much traffic it gets, but that's fantastic. Thanks.
Echo the comments in regards to the festival week and just a fantastic weekend. One of the things that I thought was extraordinary, I want to make sure everybody knows, the walking path behind Park and LaBelle and Eagles Landing is open. And to see everybody down there during the fireworks and the boat parade and that vision of that community attribute to that development actually be used was awesome. So when you're going for your walk, and if you're going from the community center, you can get to Veterans Park and you can get to the Village Green without having to walk down Wisconsin Avenue. It's better access to the lake than we've ever had. We did it right.
And I want to thank the rec department for having the bathrooms open. I know when it was first day on the job, I kind of ripped into everybody over there about that bathroom stuff. I wish that guy that was down on my park would have found that bathroom instead of the lawn.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I heard from a couple of my constituents that were quite upset about the bars. They ran out of ice. They actually had to drink warm beer because there were just too many people downtown. So we need to do something about that. It's your fault, by the way.
That's a problem, we have too many people. Any other comments? Seeing none, comments from the mayor. I'd like to thank Alderman Ellis and Spiegelberg and Gawieski for being the official, pulling the tarps off the statues after I cut the ribbon. I guess the estimate was about 8,000 people downtown that night, so it turned out to be an excellent night. The whole weekend, I did get a chance to hand out the awards at the Arts Festival on Sunday. They had a great attendance, and everything worked out great. So another successful week. I think the Parks and Rec Department did a great job getting the parks cleaned up and ready to go, and it was a fantastic weekend. So that's all I have. Do we need to do closed session tonight? We need a motion that, I was just thinking, we could,
Yes.
yeah, there's no comments from the audience. We'll go into closed session per Wisconsin Stats 19.85 per N1 per N E. Deliberating or negotiation the purchase of public properties, investing in public funds, or conducting other specified public business. Whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, this is on the sanitary district contracts. We need a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zort.
Closed
Carried.
session.